Good evening. I want to call the Windsor Board of Education special meeting for Tuesday, January 14th to order. If we could please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out for tonight's special meeting. Audience to visitors, anyone wishing to address the board may come forward, sign in on the sheet at the table. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Just as a reminder that no remarks or comments can be made about employees of the Windsor Public Schools or children outside of your own. When there are 30 seconds remaining, Mr. Fury will hold up a red card as an indication for you to start winding up your comments, and at 3 minutes, he will hold it up permanently. Is there anyone wishing to be recognized on the audience to visitors? Anyone wish to be recognized on the audience to visitors? Seeing and hearing none, I will close audience to visitors. Next on the agenda is the presentation of the school development plans. I will recognize Dr. Cook.
Yes, thank you, President Lockhart. And so as you can see, we have quite a few of our administrators here today to present. This was our rescheduled meeting. So original instructions were to have this presentation and questions last maybe a little bit over an hour because we had another piece of that plan as well. So I've given them a little bit of time back. I gave them pretty strict restrictions before, but I've given them a little bit of time back. But in terms of the presentation, we kept it the same as the original PowerPoint that the board saw in early December. And so with that said, we're pleased to present our school development plans. We're going to start today, gone both ways before. We're going to start at the high school and work our way down to the lower grade levels. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sunday, who's here with his administrative team.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak about the work we're doing at Windsor High School. I would go as far to say that we're quite proud of the work that we do. Hopefully you guys are hearing about the quality of the work that we're doing as well. We're blessed to receive the support that you guys have given us over the last couple of years to continue to do this work. So I'll say this. Over the years, the framework for our school improvement plan has not changed a lot. What we've recently tried to do is take a look at the things that we do and do them at a higher level. That being said, the work that happens at 50 Sage Park Road is led by a few individuals who are in this room right now, and I would like to recognize those individuals for the work they do with the rest of our professional community. So as I say your name, please stand so we can put a face with the name. I'm going to start with introducing myself. My name is Zoe Sunday. I am a proud fourth-year principal at Windsor High School, home of the Warriors, and I am proud to work with the children of Windsor and proud to do that work with the leaders I'm about to introduce. Grade 12 assistant superintendent, maybe aspiring, maybe future.
She stood right up.
Grade 12 assistant principal, Ms. Phaedra Duras, please stand. Grade 11 assistant principal, Mr. Brian Parker. Newly minted Doctor of Philosophy, grade 9, freshman assistant principal, Dr. Stephanie Lockhart. That deserves a whole clap. Clap it up.
I'm clapping it up.
Grade 10 assistant principal, Ms. Shatana DeRosie. Our content and curricular experts, leading the English department, Ms. India Monroe. Leading the math department, Ms. Megan Maines. Leading the science department, Ms. Sindhu Thomas. Leading the social studies and history department, Ms. Nancy Curley Kirk. Leading the special education department, Ms. Sarah Anderson Potts. Supervising grades 6 through 12, School Counseling Department, Dr. Chaka McIntyre. Is she here today? Okay. And also newly appointed Supervisor for Athletics 6 through 12, who may or may not be here, Mr. Chris Fulton. Okay. So we've done a tremendous amount of work over the years to make sure our kids are having the best educational experience, and we're continuously looking to improve the profile of Windsor High School. None of that work could be possible without the support from the board. For as long as I've been here, and even prior to my arrival, you guys have relentlessly supported Windsor High School with the resources we need to make sure our kids are adequately prepared for the SAT course. We've done that by expanding course offerings in the school day and expanding seats in our after-school program. Last year, we made a commitment to dive a little bit deeper and improve our AP performance, and we were able to proudly say we did that by a little bit more than 5%. There were some tremendous efforts by a variety of people. Most notably, our science department really stepped up to the plate and really did some work that really, we felt, moved that needle. I'm going to speak a little bit about the School Governance Council with a little bias because we do have members on the board who are members of the School Governance Council. And I'm saying I'm speaking with bias because, in my opinion, this is debatably one of the highest functioning school governance councils that I've ever been a part of. The dynamic conversations are always centered on what's in the best interest of kids and what can have an impactful results on our schools. I'll jump a little bit into that a little bit later. So the work that we did last year that yielded a lot of positive results for us were governed by the systems. We look to improve the systems that we utilize to govern operations of our schools, specifically Tier 1 instruction with our learning walks model, our multi-tier systems of support, which captures kids who may struggle in multiple domains, and then our system that we have in place to improve adult capacity, which is our professional learning communities. Other structures that we have put in place that just kind of tee us up to monitor the progress of our work is routine analysis around kids with struggling grades. So we annually, routinely I should say, run a DNF report. We use that as an activating instrument that prompts us to go ahead and implement the MTSS process for academics, for attendance, as well as student conduct. I know certainly at the upper grade levels, we employ quarterly audits where counselors work with grade level administrators and the supervisor of school counseling to make sure that students are making adequate progress to meet and satisfy the graduation requirements of the Windsor Board of Education. And then we also have a solid infrastructure which has really been reinvigorated by Chris Lasky and John Yarney in our credit recovery program, which is our Edgenuity program. So as we looked at this year in designing our school development plan, it's quite an intensive process. We carve out 3 full days in the summer. We have a variety of people take time after the 4th of July to come in and spend time with us in our media center. And while we're there, we dive deeply into the data from the previous year, and we get into honest and vulnerable conversations about the things we need to do to make sure every child who walks into our doors has an exceptional learning experience. And then we get to work and we create strategies that really end up being implemented in our school improvement or school development plan. It's a rich process, it's important, it's valuable, and I think any kind of growth process that is to be implemented requires a tremendous amount of diverse voices. So, that being said, we took an examination at our current systems, and based on a thought exchange that we shared last year, we had some innovative ideas from faculty members, and we shifted the way we do our learning walks, which is our Tier 1 work. And we moved it from a structure that required pull-out, and we embedded it into our Wednesdays. With that design, we were able to successfully reach every teacher in order to travel across the campus and observe instruction around a selected or identified area of focus, and then unpack that for improvement. One of the things that we embedded in our school goals this year is, in order to do this work, we always ground our decisions on data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. So we embedded that into the work that we do as a talent development goal this year. MTSS is debatably one of the most complex systems that we have because it changes real time. Mr. Parker has led a lot of that work at the building level. We're happy to also announce that a lot of PLCs have adopted MTSS as a PLC goal, specifically looking at Tier 2 work. But additionally, with the support from district leaders and Dr. Oliver's office, we're working also with a district specialist in MTSS who is now calibrating things from building to building to make sure we have similar formats pre-K through 12. This year, we also received training, again, thanks to the support by district leaders, on EduClimber, which is a platform that we feel will allow us to be able to triangulate data quite efficiently to monitor student progress and certainly intervene. So as we build up our efficacy with that platform, hopefully we can make cleaner decisions and more timely decisions to be able to position children for success. One of the things that has always been a central focus of the district, and certainly at the building level, is conversations about how we can improve our climate. Happy teachers teach happy kids. Happy kids allow happy teachers to come to work and enjoy the work that they do. One of the things that we committed to is celebrations and recognitions. We have been blessed to have a variety of people receive recognitions, including individuals such as Dan Christus, who was recognized by the American Red Cross. Dustin Rickey in our CTE department just got recognized as an adjunct professor with Goodwin. We've had faculty members present at different conferences. As a matter of fact, I know we have a cohort of faculty members who are who've been meeting to brainstorm a presentation proposal that I believe will be presented at the CERC conference on dismantling racism. And that's a pretty powerful group because they have some pretty important things to say that I think a lot of people need to hear as well. Out of our SGC, we had a parent recognition for contributions to a school community. Ms. Anita Crawford has been one of the foundational members of this SGC, working with everybody on the committee. And we were blessed to have a member of our community get recognized as one of 26 regional towns for their contributions to the school community. Our work is always going to continue around student decision making. I will say this from a very biased and authentic place. Since I have been blessed to lead this school, I'm going to knock on wood when I say this, this has been the smoothest first semester respective to our student behavior, the conduct, and the way they go about making decisions and treating each other. Hopefully you guys are hearing much of the same from our families. So we're very proud of our children. We're proud of the work that our teachers are leading. We're proud of the work that these individuals behind me are doing in order to continue to improve the quality of the work that we do at Windsor High School. So I'm going to close with this in the talent and development. This is ongoing work. And part of my work as principal is to make sure that I am constantly in a space where I am introspective and analyzing the quality of the systems and infrastructures that we have in place to lead our academic experience for 180 plus days. So with that said, we started this year with a focus on collective efficacy. We have some pretty lofty goals. And the foundational principle behind collective efficacy is the notion that regardless of the goals that we set, we have a collective belief that we have the skills, capacities to meet those goals, and in areas where we feel that we need to acquire those skills and capacities, that we make a commitment to go out and get those skills. So That being said, we're 2 weeks away from closing the first semester. We had a faculty meeting today, shortly before our professional development opportunity, and had a conversation with our professional community, and there was a lot of positive feedback. But they were also very realistic in that regardless of how quality it is, there's times where it does feel overwhelming. So we're gonna keep a steady pulse on that, and we're gonna continue to have the highest expectations, but also be realistic in understanding that sometimes people need to catch their breath in order to do this work at a high level. And that's it.
Thank you. Dr. Cook?
So what we thought we would do is everyone's going to stay for all the presentations. The principals are going to stay for the presentations. Some of the high school staff may be leaving us, and that we can call them back up for questions at the end, if that's because there may be questions that are answered later on in the presentation. Sure.
All right.
Okay.
Sure.
So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Ms. Jorgensen, principal of Sage Park Middle School.
Everyone's it. It's kind of dark in here, huh? Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Leanna Jorgensen, and I'm the principal of Sage Park Middle School. Tonight, I have with me one of my assistant principals, Ms. Jennifer Balness. She's to my right. And I also have Mr. William Fisher, who's another one of our assistant principals. Thank you for having me here tonight so I can share with you some of the wonderful things that are taking place at Sage Park Middle School, as well as some of the areas that we are diligently working on to make sure that we provide our students with the most optimal form of education possible. So as we begin, some of our strengths are multi-tiered system of support. I'm particularly proud of this, and the fact that last year we were able to add 2 additional staff to support our students who are in need of more personalized instruction. We have approximately a little bit over 100 of our students who need additional support, and so providing additional staff for that and giving our kids exactly what they need was definitely a strength. We continue to monitor our students' progress as we develop action plans for our students, every single one of them this school year, and so we are closely monitoring their success. Another area of strength for us at Sage Park are our professional learning communities. We have approximately 12 professional learning communities across the school, at least 4 within each grade level. Each content professional learning community work together, collaborate, and share their expertise with each other. These teachers work weekly on lesson plan formatting, curriculum, student achievement. They work on the idea of how do we know what our students know? How do we measure what they know? And how will we know when our students are not learning? So under those premises, our teachers are able to plan effective lessons and to meet our students at their level. Another area of strength for us last year was our physical fitness passing rate. This is middle school. Students should love physical education. We've worked really hard over the past couple of years to get them to excel at the physical fitness 4 main areas. Last year, our students were able to increase their scores in 6th grade from 31% to about 64%. And we changed our testing format. Instead of students taking all of the tests all at once at the beginning of the year, we stretched the test out throughout the entire year, allowing them to have an assessment 1 per quarter. In the 8th grade level, we also saw an increase of their success, moving from a 42% passing rate to about 57%. And so our teachers and our students were extremely proud. It did require that we did bribe them just a little bit with some rewards and some recesses and some pizza parties. Ironically, to pass the physical fitness test, we're feeding them pizza. However, our students did rise to the challenge and did do well. extracurricular activities. So it's middle school, and one of the things that we know that when our students feel as if they're part of the school community, they tend to do well, both academically and socially emotionally. And so last year, very, very proud of the fact that we were able to hire additional coaches to be a part of the interscholastic teams. We started, especially, well, not last year, this year, we started working on expanding our intramural programs. This year, earlier this school year, we had volleyball, where we had a wait list. We had so many students applying to participate that we had a wait list, which we are now pulling from for this, this time of the year. We have weightlifting, which will be taking place. Just an assortment of activities for intramural. We also have clusters where our students weekly come after school. Teachers share their talents with our students through various clubs, and our students sign up. We have a large portion of our student body participate in clusters. We have our summit program, which is after school, which is our homework help program. We have our technology student association program. We have an array of activities that will keep our students engaged after school to help them build that community feeling at Sage Park Middle School. And so while we have met with a level of success in that area, we are still looking for ways to improve and to get every single one of our students involved in some form of after-school activity. We also have our Family Resource Center. Our Family Resource Center, I believe this is our second year of fully running this resource center. The Family Resource Center has become one of the most valuable aspects of our school. It is one of the ways that we can help support our families outside of the norm. And so Ms. Taisha Serrano, who runs our Family Resource Center, has been very creative and attentive to the needs of our school families. We have a play group that comes and meet at the middle school, which is different, right? So we have toddlers running around, but they're being read to by our 7th and 6th graders who come in during their lunchtime and mentor our younger kids. Some of the students who participate in the play group are siblings of individuals who attend our middle school, and sometimes they're just individuals who live in town. So it's starting that connection from home to school at a very young age. We also have a Closet of Love, which provides support for some of our neediest families. Families donate clothing, apparel, etc. And then parents make appointments to come on in and gather stuff that they may need for their own children. We have a food share program that we link with where we provide food to go home for our kids on a weekly basis. So our Family Resource Center serves as just another aspect or another part of our building where we're trying to make sure that we take care of our children in a holistic fashion. And so by reaching out to those families and trying to figure out what is it that they need from us and being able to provide them with some of those fundamental needs has been a definite plus. And then we have the New England Association of Schools, Colleges, and Accreditation. So the NEAS process. So we went through the NEAS process for the past, 2 years. It has been a lengthy, multi-year process where we audited our practices, we audited our curriculum, we looked at everything in our building. We lift up the hood, so to speak, in quote unquote. Once we've audited our processes, we identified areas that we deem required attention that would enhance our students' performance overall and make Sage Park Middle School a welcoming place. Over the past year, our school staff, which is an amazing group of individuals, worked diligently in trying to meet the needs. This year in October, we had our second visit from the NEAS accreditation team, which took several days to basically look at the areas that we said we were going to work on, but then also get a feel for our entire school community. I am proud to say that upon their departure, they said that they will be recommending us to be accredited, which is great. Thank you to our entire school community. But they also gave us many wonderful commendations, stating that Sage Park is a place where teachers put students' needs first, students have choices, The social emotional needs of students are placed before anything else. We try to make sure that we work with the whole child, and that they are also very supportive of the fact that we have our whole school community, such as our parents and our board, standing behind us to help us meet the needs that we deem are worthy to work on. So that was a definite blessing. The road to construction, the road to perfection is always under construction, right? So as we move through trying to figure out what's our next steps, what are the areas that we need to improve upon, when we look at in the academics, we have new curriculums. So it's a matter of making sure that while we implement the new curriculum, we implement it with fidelity, but we also raise the level of awareness and the level of skill sets for our teachers to make sure that they do a dynamic job while imparting this to our teachers, our students. We have professional development that's being provided for them. We also look at disaggregating student performance data. While we assess our kids on a regular basis, we look at what areas are students showing that are in need of success, what areas do we need to go back and make sure we either reteach, and then we also take a look at walkthrough data. As we walk through our classes, the administrators, our coaches, and even our teachers walk through classes. As we take a look through our rooms, we want to make sure that our level of instruction is consistent across the board. That when you walk into a Sage Park classroom, the level of instruction that you're receiving is not happenstance based on the teacher, but it is something that is regularly seen throughout our building. We also realize that we're working with children. And because we're working with children, we have to create a positive school climate, a place where our kids will want to come on a daily basis. And so as a result, through our school improvement plan, we increase our advisory lessons to 6 times a month. I think in the past we did 4 times. And then we differentiated our advisory lessons as well. Not only do we do second step lessons, we also do equity lessons, and we also do grade level specific lessons based on the need that arise through disaggregating school data. We also increase our team building activities. We have 9 teams throughout the building. We have 9 teams throughout the building, and each team is required to do a team building activity per month. Not per month, per quarter. Team building activities allow students within the team to form a community, to create a bond, to get to know their teachers, and to get to know each other on a more personal level. It is required that when the team building activities are being designed, that engagement, discourse, and teamwork must be a part of the activities that the students work on. And our teachers have become or have gotten very creative with what our kids are able to do. So it's exciting to see them when they're engaged in their various team building activities. We're also providing restorative practices, professional development for all of our teachers. Right now, we know that, not one method fits all. And so as we embrace PBIS as a school, we are also looking to enhance a lot of our practices through various other strategies. And restorative practices, this year our staff is being trained, and they're learning the basic tenets of restorative practices, and we're working on embedding those practices into what we are currently doing. And last but not least, providing wellness activities for our teachers. My teachers hear from me all the time that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so at least one Tuesday a month is devoted to our teachers working on themselves, providing them with avenues in which they can converse with each other on how to best take care of themselves, giving them chances to do activities outside of what they would normally want to do. Although some of our teachers, for them, wellness activity means just getting some time to sit and review their lesson plan, which is fine by me as well. As we start to make our way through the school year, we also look at refining our skills. While professional learning communities has been a strength for us, it is something that we continue to work on, making sure that there's a high level of accountability when our teachers get together, making sure that there's a clear focus. So while it's a strength, it is always still and will be an area of improvement every year as we make our way throughout the year. And lastly, various systems for our students' success. Again, MTSS is a strength for us. We have revised our system and our programs over the past 2 years drastically. I meet with my teachers at least twice a month on a Friday. I meet with every single team as we sit and we talk about student performances, academic and behavioral. But it's also still an area of improvement. We're still working on accountability system. We're still making sure that our action plans are up to date, that our Tier 1 teachers have access to those plans to also inform their practices. And then our school climate team. What is school climate without making sure we get the input and the feedback from the students or the individuals that we're creating this climate for? And so we have begun the process of including students on some of our teams in the building, the school climate team, the equity team. We're inviting students, and students are more than happy and more than vocal to sit down and give their input as far as what they feel they need, and we're willing to listen to them. And so as we make our way through the year, I want to say that I have a dynamic staff at Sage Park Middle School. I've never seen teachers work harder at trying to understand the complex being of a middle schooler. From ages 11 to 13, they do come with an assortment of emotions from one day to the next, but our teachers are patient, they're understanding, and they do understand the middle schooler mind. And so, thank you for listening to me this evening.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Principal of John F. Kennedy School, Mary Kay Ravenel.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us. This is really exciting for me because, it's hard to come out after a long day of school, but it's really fun to actually listen to my colleagues and hear about their schools and how we're really all aligning ourselves. This is my 8th year in Windsor as principal, and I'm very proud to say that. And I feel that the work that has been done, it's been immense. It's been a big, heavy lift that we're doing. We still have a long way to go. I know we all feel that there's so much more we can do. But seeing that we're all aligned, you're going to hear all the same language between schools. So we really are working together as a team. As I said, it's my 8th year in Windsor. I've been in education since 1987. I've been blessed to teach grades 1 through 8 and been a reading teacher, instructional coach, and now an administrator. To my right is Kim Wood, the assistant principal. And she joins me from Oliver Ellsworth last year, which was wonderful for my third graders, our third graders, to see her. So our strengths. I think areas where we are, we're very proud of is the work that we've done around Tier 1 instruction. So we did a lot of work last year about analyzing student data and making sure that the work we do with students is aligned to their specific needs. So last year, 100% of our teachers set individual goals with the students in reading and math, and those goals were used during student-led conference times. So students would meet with the teachers as well as their parents, and they actually led the conference. And it was wonderful to see 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders actually in charge of their learning and understanding their goals and where they are in those goals. They would speak of the progress towards the goal and whether they met the goal, and they maybe set a new goal and shared with the parents how they could support them at home. We also have our PLCs, are analyzing assessments such as the unit assessments, the STAR tests that you hear about, and we use those results to tailor the instruction for the students, again, for their specific needs, and that's a lot of times where the goals come from. And I'm very happy to announce that we just recently received our growth target scores for the SBAC scores. And for John F. Kennedy, every student gets a growth target score if you've taken the SBAC the year before. And so if you were in 3rd grade and now you're in 4th grade, you have a growth target that is set for you. The state tells you what that goals are. And in English language arts, 70% of our students last year met their growth target, and that's what we talk about all the time. we mentioned learning is the work. So we just need to make sure that our students are learning with us, and that is evidence of that Tier 1 instruction. And in regards to our math, 80% of our students met their growth targets. So we were really excited to have that information and help us continue the work that we're doing at JFK. Thank you. And in regards to the positive school climate, you hear a lot of that as well between all the schools, because that is so important. If you don't have happy teachers, you don't have happy kids. That is so true. So we did a lot of work last year. We researched restorative practices, and we began to kind of dabble in it a little bit. A small group of teachers went to the restorative practice training last year, and they came back, and we began to talk about it with our staff. What does it mean? What does it look like? How would a classroom in a school be running if you were really in that mindset? And it really talks about helping students understand that when you have relationships and you damage them in some way, you have to restore it. You have to give back to either that person and the community, and we began to think of creative ways that we could do that within our classrooms and our school. We also participated last year in the Yukon Health and Wellbeing Study. Yukon came to us and offered us that, so we definitely reached out and we were willing to spend time with them working on that. So staff last year met with consultants, and they did surveys, and we learned about what are the difficult times teachers are having and how could we put in some activities or throughout the day that would help teachers manage the stress there is a lot of stress in education. There's a lot of pieces you have to do between instruction and meeting the needs of the students and supporting the families. And so we developed some activities this year that you're going to hear about in our improvements that we're working on. In regards to our talent development, we provided professional development, again, around the social emotional learning, and part of it was restorative practice, some was second steps, and we did other work to help teachers understand what our students are dealing with sometimes in their home lives and how we can support them. Again, you hear about the multi-tiered support system, the MTSS. At JFK, we also have that, and we're very proud of the work that we've done around there. So our MTSS team oversees all the students in the building, and then we have subcommittees that keep eyes. So we try our best to keep eyes on every student in our building. We have a literacy intervention team that meets weekly. We have a math intervention team that meets weekly, as well as our behavior intervention team. And those teams ensure that students are getting what they need in whatever area they need it, whether it's academic, social, emotional, and if they are concerned, then they bring it to the big team of the MTSS to address the needs. We also have a student assistant team, so if teachers are concerned about students that aren't in the light for some reason and they pop up, then we have a place where they can be sent to make sure that, again, students are getting what they need at all times. So we're always looking for improving. The thing with education is, you can never be at the end of the road because there's always new things that come up that you can try, and with the technology world and everything changing, we have to keep changing with our students. So in regards to academics, we worked on our Tier 1 instruction last year. This year, our focus is really on our Tier 2. So ensuring that students are getting what they need if they have small gaps in the areas. And so 100% of our teachers this year are working on implementing high-quality small group instruction, and that is our professional learning community work. So every time they meet, they bring material around whether they've analyzed assessments, and they're asking for feedback, and they're showing groups and what they're working on with their targets, and ensuring that students are making progress, and they're progress monitoring them and reassessing and creating new groups as the year goes on. For our positive school climate, this is an area we're very proud of, and I have to take a second to commend my assistant principal, Ms. Wood, who created a cheer team this year. So we have 60 students who stay Friday after school. Yes, 60. It is insane, in the gym. And she runs it all by herself. We have some staff that help, but Kim pretty much is leading them. And it's so wonderful to see. That's like Fridays, we don't have to worry about our attendance, because with 60 kids coming, it is amazing, absolutely amazing. So thank you, Kim. So we're trying to always provide opportunities so kids are excited to be in our school. Joanne Feiberg, who does restorative practice training, one of her comments is that you want your school to be a destination, and I love that thought. You want people to want to be there. We have implemented daily morning meetings and closing circles. That's part of restorative practices, so that you begin and end your day with your students as a community. And we also have a positive morning meeting with the entire school every Monday, so that we can start it on a positive note and talk about what we're doing well and how we continue doing that, and celebrating our extraordinary eagles in any way that we want to honor students. We have our JFK Teacher Wellness Committee that I spoke about earlier, and it's been really exciting to see that committee come together. So they offer monthly activities, and they have different focuses. And this month is on sleep, and it's really about understanding that your well-being in regards to sleep is important. We have raffles. We have a walking club now. That's 3 times a week. You'll see a group of teachers between 10 and 18 are walking 3 times a week together. We have a staff yoga that occurs 1 time a week. We have a wellness bulletin board with about nutrition and health. So it's really nice to see everybody really coming together and supporting each other, because it is a heavy work every single day. We also do home visits. Last year, I'm so proud of our grade 3 teachers. Every student in our building met a staff member prior to school starting for 3rd grade. We went to every single house and we delivered welcome bags. It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time doing it. And now we're offering to all grades home visits. So we've had about 60 so far, and we're continuing to try in grades 3 to 5. And support people as much as we can. Talent development, we have, as I mentioned, the restorative practice training. We're continuing the work around that. Thanks to Principal Williams, who brought Joanne Feiberg to us to provide some training in district, has been amazing. We've been able to send about 10 people for each session from every building. So we were able to send about 20 teachers so far from JFK for just this year alone. So we're looking forward to some more training around that. And it was very positive. A lot of teachers are asking for more around it. Participate in teacher peer observation walks. We are in the process with our school development team rolling this out. You'll have heard it from the other buildings. They're doing learning walks with their staff. So I want to get feedback from our staff as to how they would like it to go in regards to the process, such as the feedback. Would you like individual feedback? Would you like school feedback? How would you like to participate? And the data collection around it. Our goal is to have each teacher by June have at least 2 opportunities. 2 to 4 is our goal, but we would like at least 2 opportunities to participate in a learning walk with their colleagues. And then lastly, we're looking at enhancing our professional learning communities. We have 2 PLC leaders. We have a humanities PLC and a STEM PLC, and they have been given district training in regards to the work that they're doing in our professional learning communities. And it's nice because it's district-wide, so it's aligning between the work that's been doing at the high school to Sage Park to the elementary schools, so that our PLCs are run in a more systematic way. And then lastly, one of the things we're doing is our quote at JFK is learning is the work, and it's not just for students. So we're looking for teachers to lead and be part of activities and professional development. So today we have professional development, and it was basically led by the teachers. So they step up, and they've been doing work. We've read a book called Culturize, and it's really about building a strong community, and our teachers are leading the work there. So we're very proud of that and having teachers do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Clover Street School, Michelle Williams, principal.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, my name is Michelle Williams. As Dr. Cook said, I'm the principal at Clover Street School. This is actually my 24th year in education, and my 15th in Windsor. They like to call me the senior admin, but I'm not accepting that. No. So anyways. It is my 12th year at Clover Street School, and prior to being at Clover Street School, I was a vice principal. Back then, we were called vice principals. I started at Pequannock. I did a year at Pequannock full-time. I did a stint of half-time between Pequannock and Clover, and then I went to JFK full-time. And then I was the director of the summer school at OE, so I've hit all of the elementary schools and have loved it. I definitely enjoy working in Windsor Public Schools, so I count it as an honor to be here as one of your principals. So I'm going to introduce my administrative team. She's sitting right in the middle of me. No, sir. And her name is Michelle Williams. No, so I'm only kidding. I saw you looking like, what is she talking about? Right. So, it's me, myself, and I. No, sir. So anyways, I do have a head teacher, Dahlia Ganesh May. She just started January 2nd. Yeah, we're excited about that. She comes to us from JFK. She's been in the district about 20 years, so we're excited about that new change at Clover Street School. So getting into, am I on my way? Okay. So, to talk about some of the things that we've done at Clover Street School, I almost wanted to say ditto to, everything that Ms. Ravinola talked about. Like, okay, we're doing that. We are not doing cheerleading, though, because my my assistant principal can't get that going. So, but anyway, only kidding. So we do not have that going on. But anyways, we, too, are working on, obviously, our academics and improving all the things that we do with our students. We really had a focus on our Tier 2 and Tier 3 academic and behavioral interventions. And here I know it says in reading and math, but behavior should be included in that as well. And that process really comes about, I should say, via our multi-tiered system of supports meetings that we have weekly. And we have the focus on, 1 week it's reading, 1 week it's math, 1 week it's behavior. So those people know that they have to present the data around reading or around math or around behavior. And we really, really tune into our students specifically. So it's not overall, it's not generalized. We are talking about specific students, about their reading concerns that might be happening, what their supports are, if we need to change something in how they're being serviced. We also do that as far as our students in Tier 3, if we need to possibly move a student from Tier 2 to Tier 3. This is also the time when we have conversations with, we have had conversations with our classroom teachers, and they've completed the SST paperwork, and so we review what the classroom teachers' concerns are during that time as well. And then if we decide and determine if it's time to possibly do a referral, if that's necessary, to special education, and have that meeting and then move forward. We also we have a lot of conversations around data, so we're triangulating our data all of the time. I do a bi-weekly coaches meeting with just my coaches to discuss the work that the teachers are doing and what they're doing with their teachers around student data, or with all of, I shouldn't say their teachers, our teachers around student data. So I meet with the STEM coach and the humanities coach, and we discuss exactly how their coaching sessions are going with teachers. I may assign a coaching opportunity for a teacher. The teacher's well aware that they'll have that opportunity. So, I say, most recently, to the humanities coach, I have a teacher that I want you to go in and observe and do some modeling with, and here are the areas that he or she may need to focus on. And then she follows up with them after I've had that conversation with them as well, and then they begin their coaching sessions. I'm also meeting with our PLC leaders around some of their processes. That's going to be somewhere in these slides again. But as I've heard everyone mention so far, is around our positive school climate. We are really transitioning from being that PBIS district, PBIS schools, to really looking at restorative practices and how we're building relationships. That's the key, right? How are we building relationships with our students? And that's what restorative practices, as Ms. Ravinola said, like if there's a harm that's caused, you should repair that relationship. But then it's also talking about how we form relationships with our students in the classroom, how the teacher helps that occur between the teacher and the student, as well as between student to student. So I've made some changes, at the school level around our schedules to ensure that our teachers have more time to have social interactions with our students, because we are always focusing on academics, but there should be some times as well that they're having some social opportunities. And I challenge them to learn. I get a staff meeting and I say, well, I challenge you to learn something new and different about a student in your classroom every day. And that's not academic, right? So we need to know our students. We need to be well-rounded with what we know as far as our students. And that also leads to what you've heard others say around our own teachers and their health and well-being, right? So as a school administrator, it's our job to make sure our teachers also are in a good place and in a good spot mentally and emotionally. And so we at Clover Street School have also participated in the Yukon Health and Well-Being Study, and a lot of good work came out of that. And actually, it was really the work of the teachers, and I was, we as administrators were more on the sideline, receiving information and doing some things differently, but the teachers are really the ones that are directing the work and running the work. So there's a newsletter that goes out to staff. We did some sort of a bingo back in October that the staff had to do, they had different challenges to do, and they were non-work related activities, like read a book, take a bath, things like that, and you had to did you guys, I'm sorry, I don't mean it that way, Lord have mercy, I know that didn't sound right, but some of us got what I meant, like take a nice spa bath, a bubble bath, and enjoy yourself, right? So anyways, but it's all about your relaxation and your mental well-being. So just little different things like that. We've had paint night for our staff, and a lot of staff participated in that. Today, our Sunshine Committee did a hot cocoa bar right before our staff meeting. So just opportunities. I actually go out like every other week and buy snacks and put in the Family Resource Center for staff, so that when they have they need a little pick-me-up, they can go into the FRC and they have snacks there for them. Another area that we focused on and did some really good work around, and this came out of restorative practices too, and this was about really providing our teachers with professional development and support around the social-emotional piece. And I know it says about, so that they are more enabled to meet the diverse needs of our students. So I had teachers go to restorative practices early last school year, and one came back and sent me an email like, Michelle, can we have Joanne Freiberg come to the school and give this part of the training to all of the staff? So I scheduled that with Joanne, and that was a teacher request. And I was familiar with it. So as the administrator, I have to lead this work. So I went to an early session on restorative practices, so I knew exactly what the teachers was talking about. And so then Joanne Freiberg and another colleague from the State Department of Education came and did a workshop on advanced childhood experiences and what the trauma that they may come with, and how you can respond as a teacher, and then what you should be looking for, and really around another thing that Joanne Freiberg likes to say is there should be no bears in the classroom, right? Meaning the kids shouldn't feel like you are on top of them and you're all over them. Like, you should have a welcoming environment, that it should be an environment, a place, a destination where they want to come to every day. Then the head teacher at that time, she did some work around trauma-informed practices for our students, and she led some professional development around that for staff. Just today, actually, my school social worker, Aubrey Hales, and my school psychologist, Francisca Queno, did a session on de-escalation strategies and what teachers can use in the classroom. So they showed a video of how some things that are going on in other schools, actual teachers talking about what they're doing. And then they did some role playing with some different scenarios for teachers, and then we were able to have discussion around how to handle different situations in the classroom. And they just like we tell our students to breathe. We need to breathe too as adults at times, right? So they need to hear that too. Because I'm always telling students, okay, breathe, take deep breaths, but our staff needs to do that as well. So that's what they were saying to the staff today. Take a deep breath, remove yourself from the situation. Give the student time and space before you want to have a conversation about whatever happened. They might need some time. You can't always talk to them right away. So we had two scenarios. One was the wrong way to handle a situation, and then the other one was, then two other adults came and did role played, and a more efficient way, an effective way to respond to the same situation. And what came out of that was, when you respond in a gentler way, you might find out that there's more going on with the student than if you're the bear, right? And they're just going to react to you. But then once you find out something else that might be going on with that student, you have a totally different reaction as well. So it's about us stepping back and taking that time to get to know our students and build those relationships. So Another area that we focused on last year was around our Tier 3 behavioral interventions, and this was really a goal of my related services staff, my school psychologist, my school social worker last year, and my head teacher really worked on this and really improving our functional behavior assessments and our behavior intervention plans. But even, and when I say improving that, really working with the students to provide them with the support that they say they need and not what we say they need, right? So giving our students a voice. That's another thing around restorative practices, is making sure the students have the opportunity to tell their side, to be able to, and feel like they're heard, right? So sometimes adults believe that because they're an adult that they're right, but that's not always true, right? So our students have to feel like their voice is being heard. So those are the things that we really did when we looked at our behavior intervention plans, was really getting the student's voice. Doing even in our check-in and check-out, when we're looking at the areas that we're going to focus on, we sit down with the student like, okay, so here are some things that we have identified with your parents. What is something that you want to identify that you can improve on? And or how should we word this? What's the best way for us to all to go forward with this? So including the child in those conversations. And I know we're talking about 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, but they have a voice. They might be little voices at times, or they might be large voices, but they still do have a voice. And so we want to make sure they're being heard. So, and when we talk about, I've heard the others say I believe there's always opportunity for growth, and then to improve the things that we're doing at our school. And so one of the areas that we're focusing on, which is still around our Tier 2 instruction, and our Tier 1 instruction, is how we're grouping our students for that instruction. So our small group instruction, how are we planning for that? And this is really something that comes out of our strategic operating plan. And we've had conversations with Dr. Oliver around this purposeful planning for whole group instruction as well as small group instruction. So this is really some of the work that the coaches are doing with our staff when they're meeting with them. And the PLC structure that we have is, as Ms. Ravanola said, we have STEM PLC coaches and we have humanities coaches. And so they're really spending that time on this area, our small group instruction. And then our STEM coaches can meet with all of the STEM teachers at one time, once a month. And our humanities teachers, they do the same thing. And the teachers really want that opportunity, to meet with all of the humanities teachers and talk about what they're doing across grade levels. So that has been very powerful this year. And the other part is that's from our strategic operating plan, is really focusing on the rigor that our students are being engaged in, right? So, and that also was at the beginning of the school year, the staff, we spent some time on the opportunity myth, and one of the things in the opportunity myth was around our students receiving curriculum at their level, but not even just at their level, but at a higher level than where they're supposed to be. So we're really focusing on making sure we're asking those higher level thinking questions, but not just asking them, but making sure we plan for them, because at times when you're teaching, you just are asking questions, but so you have to plan for the questions that you want to ask. For one of the things that's important at our school is, I talked about our school climate, but is around improving our school connectedness for staff and students, and making sure that everyone feels like they belong at the school and that they have a voice. And so we do a community meeting once a month, and there is a focus during that meeting around school belonging. There's something that I always say to the students around school belonging: you belong here, your voice matters, you are a part of this community. The other part that's important to us at Clover Street School is that we're connected, and our students have somebody at the school that they can go to and they can talk to if there's something is bothering them. So like today there was a situation, a student became upset and someone said, go to the principal. Well, and he was telling me, he was like, I didn't go to you, I went to Miss K. And I said, and that is okay, because if that's the person you feel comfortable talking to, I'm okay with that, right? And so if that was the first person you needed to talk to, Miss K happens to be our behavior tech. So that person, I said, that is okay. Don't feel bad because you didn't come to me. And that's what we're really preaching and saying to our students, and we say to our parents. Make sure you know as a parent who that person is, and if we don't have somebody for that person, we need to work on someone for that person. So I'm actually keeping data and track on that. We're actually sending out another survey to students to make sure that they have somebody in the building that they feel comfortable talking to. So with that, we have staff members who are mentors to students in the building, and it could be a teacher had a student previously, maybe a third grade teacher had a student, and now they're in fifth grade, and that student was coming and talking to that teacher quite a bit. She noticed, he or she may have noticed some things, and then they decided, oh, you know, I'd like to be the mentor to so-and-so. And so they spend time, it could be lunch, that student could come to the classroom to help support within the classroom at times. Our gym teacher takes on a lot of students, and so students come, we have fifth grade students that come during the third grade gym time and help him in the gym session with the third graders, and they have that, we give them that 30 to 40 minutes, you know, a week, maybe every other week. It's not every week, but they have that opportunity to go and spend that time with Mr. Farr. And as I mentioned earlier, I adjusted the schedule so that our staff can be more socially interactive with our students. But when there is an opportunity, or when there is conflict between a staff member and a student, my behavior tech and my school psychologist were trained over the summer in restorative conferences. So that's another part to restorative practices, in which you have a conference about what is going on. And so I had a student that was coming to me. She was quite upset. She just felt like she wasn't being heard from the teacher. And so I said, okay, this is what we can do. We can have a meeting. And so then I asked the teacher, I said, would you be willing to have a restorative conference with this student? And she said, absolutely, because I want us to be on the same page. And so I took myself out of it, and I said, are you comfortable doing it with, you know, either Miss K or Miss Quano? The three of us had received the training. And so the student was comfortable with it being with our behavior tech. So the behavior tech ran the conference, and that helped improve the relationship between that student and that teacher, because the student has the opportunity to say, I feel like in a safe space, right? I feel like when I raise my hand, you don't call on me. I feel like you don't hear me when I'm saying that this is happening in the classroom. So they were able to have that conversation, and the teacher was able to say, I don't call on you all the time because I'm calling on other students, right? So then the teacher puts in place a way to call on students. So other things come out of that. So I'm really proud of that work that we've been doing there. Around talent development, we are implementing learning walks. And so this took us a couple of years to really get going. It had been on our school development plan, and as you heard Mr. Osunde say earlier, you're probably working on the same things year after year and trying to get, as I would want to say, better at it. So we spent a lot of time last year creating our process. Like I was like Ms. Ravanola, I wanted everybody to have 2 and 3 times by June, but we spent time creating our process and involving the teachers in that process so that the buy-in was there, so that when we are implementing it, everyone is participating positively and really taking in the feedback and giving constructive feedback. So we defined what it looked like, but we've defined what our focus was, and that's student engagement, and we defined what we wanted that to look like. Using information from our strategic operating plan, as well as working with Dave Cormier around that. You heard Ms. Ravanola talk about the restorative practices training district-wide. So I am actually in a leadership program as my own, one of the goals that I'm working on is for the district is bringing that training here. So I met with Dr. Cook over the summer. We talked about it. Because as administrators for a couple of years, we've been talking about making a transition from PBIS to restorative practices. And so Dr. Cook and I met this year, and he and I were like, okay, yes, JFK and Clover, you guys can work on it, because Mary Kay and I had done some advanced school climate training over the summer. And then it trickled down, it trickled all over, right? So then high school heard about it, Sage Park heard about it, so then more people are really involved, and I'm getting emails about what is the next session. So, because it really is about a frame of mind, I want people to understand that. It's not something that I can go to and then come back and then tell my teachers this is what we're doing. Like, you have to go, you have to experience it for yourself, because you have to say, how am I going to make this work for me and who I am and what I'm doing in the classroom. And then lastly, we are working on enhancing our professional learning communities. And this actually is also in conjunction with Dr. Oliver. At the school year, at the beginning of the school year, all of the PLC leaders received training around what the district expectations were. And so we've been continuing to work on that with our PLC leaders at the school level. I meet with them monthly. And then we go over the processes and things that we're working on in school. And again, as I mentioned earlier, where our focus is around small group instruction. And that is it for the Clover Street School.
Okay, thank you. Taryn Gruber, Principal, Oliver
Thank you.
Ellsworth.
The assistant principal and I did a great job, Dr. Hill.
Good evening. It's great to be here. So my name is Taryn Gruber, principal of Oliver Ellsworth. I had to bring up Mr. Higgins, my vice principal, because we are individuals, but we operate as a team, as a leadership team. So just a little bit about myself. I thought in the guidelines from Dr. Cook, we were supposed to give a little bio. So I wrote a couple pages about myself, but taking the lead from my senior administrators, I'm going to scratch that page off. But I did want to say I was here 9 years ago. I started my career in Hartford as a teacher. Was a teacher for 7 years in the north end of Hartford. Instructional coach in the south end of Hartford. And then the teacher that I had, the principal that I had at McDonough in the South End brought me here as vice principal. I was vice principal for 2 years. Got hired as a principal in Naugatuck, Connecticut. And now I am very happy to be back at the Oliver Ellsworth with my partner, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Spent a lifetime learning from Mrs. Higgins, a lot of resilience and fight and love for education and knowing the values that it would bring to my life and to my kids. I spent 18 years in East Hartford as a teacher before going over to CREC for 2. And now this is my first year in Windsor, and I'm honored to be here and very thankful for my pairing and my administrative team that I'm on.
So I think it's hard sometimes to put into words in a presentation like this what is happening at the school. I think, not to brag because it's not about me, but I think that what's happening at Oliver Ellsworth is magic, to be honest. Just to paint a little picture, I'm just going to talk about my this afternoon, before coming here, because I still have chills about it, to be honest with you. We had a professional development on restorative practices, stemming from what Ms. Williams brought to the district, and we did not present, teachers presented. We had 4 teachers doing different sections of the presentation. That's talent development, that's fostering teacher leadership, and they just did an amazing, amazing job. We had about a 15-minute break after that professional development, and then we met with 20 parents about how to raise achievement, and it was probably the most intense, thoughtful, passionate parent group that I've ever been in a meeting with. It was amazing. I'm so grateful to be in Windsor with this community. At the end of the meeting, I just want to say 2 statements that were made. The first mother that spoke, she said, "We are village now," and that's what we are. We are village. And then the second parent kind of looked at Stephen and I and said, "You're doing this now? Your first year of the game?" But as leaders, we have to be courageous. We have to be agents of change, and we're trying to facilitate that change and make Oliver Ellsworth better. So we hope to make you proud. Going into the strengths. So these are things that we came into at Oliver Ellsworth. They were working a lot on rigorous curriculum, utilizing staff data to guide their professional development. So teachers took a survey, and what came out of that survey is how they guided their professional development. They also worked a lot on small group instruction and Tier 2 strategies. Positive school climate is always a focus in Windsor, increasing family and community engagement. And there's a lot going on with that in terms of the community engagement. So there's the Butterfly Project, Loomis Gaining Grounds, Back to School Breakfast, Cultural Night, March Study Circle, and Fine Motor Skill Workshop. Talent development, I've never seen so many team-trained mentors. I will say at my last district, we had new teachers coming in, and it was a struggle to find team mentors. We didn't have enough. At Oliver Ellsworth, we're struggling with, we have all these team-trained mentors, very few new teachers, so they're looking for other leadership opportunities. So that's a good problem to have. For systems of student success, they were working on there, like everyone has said, systematic implementation of supports. So that's where we started. Coming in this year so far, we have restructured our student support meetings. Before, teachers were not in those meetings, so when there was talk about what students need, the teachers were not at the table. Now they are. We go through every single student's data to make sure that every single student is receiving the academic and social and emotional supports needed. And I'm talking about every student. We go student by student. Our professional development is aligned to our development plan's focus, primarily small group instruction and positive climate. For positive school climate, I've kind of mentioned, we're really hitting restorative practice hard. We're doing intensive training to make sure that every student feels valued, a part of the school community. We also are doing, this is where it's hard to kind of explain in words, but what we're doing with our staff is very every day, every minute of the day. For example, Friday afternoon, after school, everyone wants to go home on a Friday, I understand, but we'll gather the group real quick and we'll do what's called a Friday afternoon circle, where all of the whole faculty is in the lobby in a circle. And Mr. Higgins, I'd like you to talk a little bit about what happens there.
Yeah, it's just an opportunity for us to, again, continue building the community and climate. How often do we have an opportunity to thank each other for the work that we do every day? And so we try to, we've had multiple circles, and that Friday circle is just one circle where we do have the opportunity to say thank you to the people around us for all they do. You know, like a lot of restorative practices, I got to reach back to that because it is so powerful. It's all about building that social capacity. So everything we do, from how we greet each other, to going to support each other in their games, to letting each other know how we feel about one another, builds that so that when we do have a responsive challenge, we're able to do it together. So on Friday, that Friday, we wanted to get together and we wanted to let everybody know how we felt. They let us know how they felt. And it was a very, very positive experience before going on.
Another thing we're focused on is involving faculty with shared leadership. We did look at our survey results, and one of the things that came through in those results was that teachers didn't feel as though they had a say in decision making. So we do it in many different ways, but we do have a new committee, which is the Unity Committee, and we bring that together when there is a decision. It can be a small thing. For example, we talked about new playscape that we're putting in, new fence that we have installed. Thank you very much for your support. To larger things, like restructuring our whole MTSS system and how we do tiers at Oliver Ellsworth. So from the small to the big, we're trying to involve as many faculty as we can. Are there decisions that sometimes need to be made by just Mr. Higgins and me? Sure, there are. But anything that we can involve staff in, we involve staff in. Another thing that we're doing in terms of talent development is we have a goal for every, we have these opportunities to pursue PD outside of the district PD. And sometimes the same faculty members will go to these opportunities. So we have a goal of any faculty member that has not been to, not a district PD, but a separate PD in the last 3 years will go this year. And as I said, teachers leading that professional development, for example, today's PD on restorative practices. Systems for student success. We're really working to strengthen the fidelity of early intervention. So tier 2 had not been, so there's tier 1, which is what the instruction that every student gets. Tier 2, we need a little bit more help. Tier 3 is a level beyond that. Our tier 3, I felt, was pretty strong at Oliver Ellsworth coming in. Our tier 2 was not as strong. So I'm really trying to focus on our tier 2. Is the intervention that the student getting aligned to the need? Is every student that needs tier 2 getting tier 2? And are we monitoring that progress in tier 2 every week as it should be done, or every other week? And doing the same thing, Mr. Higgins meets with our behavior tech, our social worker, and our psychologist to do the same thing on the social and emotional side. Are we making a difference for every student at Oliver Ellsworth? So that is my presentation. I would just sum it up with our overall, our huge focus, are 2 things. Small group instruction, making sure that every student gets what they need academically, and positive school climate. We're really hitting those 2 things really hard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last but not least, she'll let us know that Tracy Peterson, principal at Pequannock School.
Well, I was pretty positive it was a strategy to keep me from talking too long by placing me at the end, but either way. So, as you know, my name is Tracy Peterson. I am the principal at Pequannock Elementary School. This is my 12th year in the district, but it feels like I've been here forever because I'm the only lifer, right? I've been here from a small child and now back as many years as I went to school here, I've worked here, so it works out. Prior to that, here in Windsor, I was the literacy curriculum supervisor, which I loved that job. I love to read. I love encouraging other children to learn to read and the value and importance of it. Before that, I was the itinerant, I took Michelle's position as the itinerant assistant principal between Clover Street and Pequannock, and that was really great to go back to the school where I attended as a student and to be able to give back to students and families at Clover Street. I was an elementary school teacher. I taught middle school. I even taught junior high. I was a teacher of English as a second language, which by far was the hardest job I've ever had. And so this is what I do. So I'm glad to be here this evening to talk about the work at Pequannock School. So one of the things, those of you who are longtime members of the board have heard me say a million times, what we know about Tier 1, the instruction Taryn just mentioned, you know that your Tier 1 is working when about 80 to 85% of your students are meeting your benchmarks. And so that is constantly the number we chase at Pequannock School. And so I'm really proud to say that we've experienced increased student achievement in first and second grade, in math and reading in our core areas. When I first became the principal there, we had a really strong focus on reading, and once we started to really get the ball moving in that area, we shifted gears and began to look at mathematics. So 3 years ago, only 56% of Pequannock students were meeting benchmarks as measured by STAR. Last year, 68% of those students met those same benchmarks in math as measured by STAR, and 78% of our students met those benchmarks in reading. So we're still chasing that 80%, but we are really proud of that kind of growth. Fidelity to the curriculum, strong instructional model based on the gradual release of responsibility, and a committed staff to get it right. So as a result of increasing our Tier 1 achievement, we also have been able to reduce the numbers of students requiring Tier 2, especially in first grade math. So again, 3 years ago, 25% of our first graders ended the year requiring Tier 2 support in mathematics, whereas last year, only 14% of our students required those same supports. So our teacher worked really hard in conjunction with instructional services and the STEM director and our coach to ensure that we were continuously getting better and bringing more students into the fold. That's the goal. In terms of school climate, I see our job at Pequannock as we serve families and students. And so when our school climate survey comes back that says on almost every indicator, 85% of our families responded favorably, that is motivating to continue to do the work that we do. I always say to Pequannock staff members, ours for 10 months, a family's forever. Really meaning they lend their children to us for 10 months, and our job is to treat them and give them the best possible experience they can have, because long after they leave Pequannock, they are still a part of that family. Additionally, we significantly reduced the number of students requiring Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavior interventions. Again, a couple of years ago, 7% of our students ended the year requiring Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavior supports. Last year, only 4% of our students required those supports. So really, one of the things that we did was we didn't really think about what program could we stick a child in, but how do we best program for that child's need and really individualize the supports that students were receiving. Therefore, reducing the number of students who required those supports. In terms of talent, I have the best staff. I tell anyone I would hold a Pequannock staff member up against a teacher anywhere in the world. And one of the things when we recruit new talent to Pequannock School, we really start with word of mouth. Because what we're looking for someone is who's going to be a good fit philosophically. We can support their ability to manage classrooms, to learn curriculum, and to provide instruction. But we want your philosophy to match with ours in the way we think about our families and children. And so we've been very fortunate to recruit a highly qualified, committed staff over the years. And then lastly, as you have heard all night long, we as a district have really focused on the way we provide supports to students, putting in a very systematic, structured way. So for the last couple of years, we really focused on those building supports for our Tier 3 students, meeting twice a week, ensuring that we, like the other schools, are looking at every single student's achievement. And when we don't see that steady growth and achievement, bringing folks in to talk about what can we do to better support them. And so we feel that we've developed a really systematic, structured way of providing those supports to our students. So our strategies for improvement. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, 80% is that magic number. So we're constantly looking for ways to increase achievement of all students. So 2 things that we're implementing this year is an extension of the home visits. You might not think inviting families to the school or having families come to the school is an intimidating experience, but it has the potential to do so. And we don't want to make the only way you can find out how to best support your child is if you come to us. So this year for the Cycle 3 and Cycle 4, for students who require Tier 3 interventions, whether they be behaviorally or academically, we've developed a home visit team comprised of related services folk, a classroom teacher, and an interventionist, and we are going to go to our families to show them ways in which they can support their child's learning or behavior at school. So we're excited to get started with that. The other thing is, you've heard principals this evening speak about the opportunity myth and this idea of deep engagement. So when you work with 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 7-year-olds, a lot of times what you get from children is compliance. They'll do anything the teacher asks them to do, and they are. But we want students to move beyond the idea of being compliant to being deeply engaged. And the way that we sum that concept up, right, is are they committed and invested in the work that we're asking them to do? And so as a staff, we've been really defining what does deep engagement look like? What will that look like for our students? What does that mean for us? And then what does that mean for me as the principal to help support that process? In terms of school climate, a couple of our strategies. So back to the school climate survey. So there's this one bugger question on the climate survey that says, how comfortable are you feeling that you can get to know other families in your school? And the first year we did it, was like only 49% of our families said they could get to know another family in our building. And that struck me. But if you think about the configuration of schools now, people live on two ends of town, so everyone that your child goes to school with does not necessarily live in your neighborhood. And so what we found was that people knew the people in their circle, right? If you're in Wibble, if you did Little League, if you went to the same religious institution, then you knew those folks. But if you didn't, it was difficult for people to get to know each other. So last year we started doing this thing in all of our school events. We would say to families, all right, turn to the person sitting next to you if you don't know them and introduce yourself. And we would notice that families who had been sitting next to each other all night long didn't know each other. So we continue to implement that. This year we've also included, if you get our newsletter, you might see a spotlight that we're doing on a different Pequannock family every week. At our open house event, we ask families to come down, take a picture, write a little bio about themselves. And so then we told them we were going to share with families, and then families started sending in professional pictures for us to use in the newsletter. They didn't like our school picture, I don't know, you know. And so it was just another way for families to see that they probably had more in common with families and to ease the ability to feel like you could get to know someone. We rang in the new year with a kids dance last Friday, and we also did it last year. And last year was kind of like, you know, just come, we play music and the kids danced. But this year we actually organized things for families and staff members to dance together, so that they could also utilize that opportunity. And what we noticed happening was children who were glad to see each other and were doing things together at the dance, then were bringing their families along, and then it was an opportunity to say, oh, you're Tracy's mom, and to engage and get to know a family in that way as well. We continue to look at social and emotional learning at Pequannock School. As you know, we have a social emotional learning curriculum that's implemented twice a week by the classroom teacher, but we all know that anything that you do only for twice a week for 20 minutes won't have a lot of impact. And so we wanted to look for other ways to integrate this ever important skill set into more parts of our day. So one of the things we did this year was partner with the library media specialist, and with the kindergarten students, she is also reading literature that aligns with social and emotional learning once a month to kindergarten students as a pilot to see if we would like to expand that thinking to first and second grade in subsequent years. Likewise, we have a Monday morning meeting. Every Monday morning, the whole school comes down to the gym and we sing a song, and we talk about something maybe that we did this weekend. We reinforce the values that we have agreed to as a community. And this year, what we've also implemented were social and emotional learning lessons or opportunities to highlight students who maybe had done something really well. So the best way to expand on something is not to take something new and add it on, but really to extend on what you're already doing. So in the second step curriculum, there are basically theme-based lessons: empathy, problem solving, and emotion management at our level. So for the first couple of months of school, we talked about empathy, what it means. It's actually a really complex concept, right? It's not just kindness. Like, empathy is really being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And for children our age developmentally, that's just not what you do. The world revolves around you. And so really taking the time to explain to them, to talk to them about really thinking about others' feelings. We even developed special star tickets, so if we caught someone doing something empathetic, that they would be recognized for it, and that we would even highlight it in our Monday morning meeting. So we are continuing to do those pieces. Talent development. So I saw a really interesting piece of data the other day at our district development team meeting that 22% of Pequannock staff this year was new. And I would argue that over half my building has less than 10 years experience in education. And one of the things we know about research and new teachers is if you don't bring them into the fold, if you don't support them, make them feel a part of the culture and community, oftentimes they'll leave the profession. It's a lonely profession at the elementary level. It's you in a classroom with a bunch of children, right? No other adult interaction except in the hallway after school meetings. And so it's easy to be isolated. So this year at Pequannock, we instituted something called a professionalism series. And we thought about topics that new folks might not know what to do, but might be afraid to ask someone about. So for example, what do you do when you have a conflict with a staff member? What do you do when a parent or a family is upset with you? And what we did was we identified veteran teachers in the building who were really good at these things. And we asked our new staff people, just take a moment, stop by so-and-so's classroom and ask her to give you her 2-minute shtick on what she does when she has a challenging experience. And so it's been a really great opportunity for teachers to get to know other teachers at different grade levels. If you're a new second grade teacher, you might get to know the second grade team, but you might not ever get to interact with the kindergarten team. So we ensured that staff members across all grade levels were involved in the professionalism series, and we even included paraeducators as well in the booklet. And so lastly, our strategy is to continue on under Systems for Student Success. Our strategy is to continue to refine and enhance our PLCs. We have had this structure for many years, but over the years, the people who were leading the PLCs had different forms of training. And so therefore, how PLCs operated were a little bit different at each of the grade levels. So Dr. Oliver graciously provided PD to all of the PLC leaders this year so that they heard the same message. I've always attended their PLC meetings, but this year giving feedback to them immediately about the PLC structure, and then ensuring that the PLC has the tools and resources to really look at the work, to engage in the work, to look at our Tier 2 students and to ensure that they know what to do and how to provide them with support. So we are continuing to move in a positive direction like all the other principals. It's really exciting to work collaboratively with them. Sometimes when I'm sitting here, I hear a really great idea, write a note down, I'm like, I'm gonna steal that from OE. And so, but it's a really wonderful opportunity to speak to the commitment we have to our children here and the commitment that our staff brings to the table to ensure that our children are continuously growing and learning. And that is it.
All right, for the board, that's all 6 schools. So what I would like to do is, we'll start that with the high school. And have the high school and maybe the middle school come up to the table at the same time first. And then we'll alternate with, I'll go from left to right, right to left, and ask the questions of the high school and the middle school. And try to keep a nice flow to this. All right? Ms. Ricketts, would you like to start? Anyone to my right would like to start, or shall I start to my left?
I have no questions at this time. I thank everyone for presenting. Great job. I see the improvement in the schools, and I thank you very much for your input and all of your hard work.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
To keep it balanced, I'll go to Ms. Khan and then go here. Ms. Khan?
I'm just gonna, right now, I don't have any questions at the moment. I'm just gonna notice some trends that I noticed that I really liked. I like that we were talking a lot about like small group instruction, and I see that a lot of schools are focusing on that. I think that's great. And that we're also looking at better identifying students that need tier 2 and tier 3, and or improving tier 2 and tier 3 strategies. So I was glad to see that. I was glad to see, I think it was JFK that mentioned the home visits. I like that. I think that was very nice to see, because I've seen, like some of the progress that we've made is when we made those connections across. I know Sage has done the home visits as well. So yeah, I just wanted to mention some of those trends that I noticed. That's all I have for now.
All right. Ms. Delvaux?
Thank you very much for your presentation to all of the principals. At this point, I have no questions.
Ms. Taylor?
I don't have any questions. Are we focusing just on Sage in the high school?
Well, since at this time, we're just focusing on Sage in the high school, and then once we've gone through them, then we're gonna bring up all 4 of the elementary principals and address them all at once as well.
Okay.
Instead of having each one come to the table one by one, I think this would be more efficient with the time.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Just wanted to highlight about the trends that I'm seeing, especially the middle and high school, is increasing morale for not just the students for the school climate, but also the staff celebrations and recognitions. That's pretty awesome. And I'm a little biased myself because I have a child its age. So I know for a fact that the clusters are that's astronomical. The amount of offerings, and it's not just sports, you're meeting children where they're at, down to like, there's a hair situation, which is awesome. So I just want to, that wasn't there when I was at Sage, was it? When you? No, okay. So just wanted to highlight that's really great, and it adds to the sense of community when a child feels like that they can, that they want to hang around after school.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. That's all I have.
I have 2 questions, but before the questions, just some general comments. And I won't make general comments both times around, so when we get to the elementary school, I'll just kind of lump them in. But my first comment is I really love the layout of these slides. I don't know who thought of it, but when I think about improvement, obviously academics is what we're here for, but there are other things. And right after academics, even before I saw the slides, the next thing on my own mind is the school climate. And then, it's a second bullet point on the slides. And then the next thing after that is, keeping the teachers and the staff happy. And there you go, the third bullet point. And then other systems for student success. So I was just really impressed by, and I don't know who takes credit, but it's just a really good layout. And I think between the 6 presenters, there were some really great points made in all of these. For example, for academics, one of the things that I really appreciate that Principal Ravinola said is tracking all of those students. I mean, you had that 70% success rate in growth. And one thing I'm always afraid of in academics is that we lose sight of students that are performing above average, because we spend so much time on looking at, how do we get these folks to average? And that might just be from my seat, right? So when we get presented to, we're looking at how do we grow these folks, and I'm always concerned, the folks that are performing above average already, I don't want to stop them from going to the next bar. So I like that we looked at those individual targets. On school climate, I thought everybody really brought something to the table, but a couple things is, staff yoga, and, Principal Gruber mentioned the Friday Circle. So things that we're doing to increase the school climate is amazing for talent development as well. I jotted down some notes, but just making sure that in one of the schools, again, Principal Gruber, that teachers are getting some out-of-district training. It's really great. But for student success, one of the things I said, and, Principal Jorgensen, one of the things I heard, I loved it because every student needs to do something. And I loved hearing it from you because I think it was this meeting, I'm not sure where I said it, but I've said this like once a year, that one thing I want to know about every student is they're doing something. I don't care what the something is. It doesn't have to be a sport. It doesn't have to be an instrument. It doesn't even have to be through the school. The town has a lot of programs, but everybody should be doing something to get involved in the community. So you targeting that, I think, is a huge thing for student success. So I was just really happy with the layout and happy with how everyone came together and really looked at those things. How do we keep the staff happy? How do we keep a good, good climate? But the two questions, one's going to be a little bit of a curve. They both might be a little bit of a curve, but one's a little more specific and one's general. The specific one for Sage Park, I was looking through the development plan, and one of the numbers here on page, I think that's the page number 9. I don't have the full background on this school climate survey. It's unfortunately not going to be in the slide deck. It's in the separate development plan. But there was a question at the bottom of page 9 in the Sage Park plan, or sorry, at the bottom of the first block. Overall, how much do you feel you belong at your school? That was 41%, which obviously stands out. So I don't have the background on, that survey, or if it was just a yes or no, do you feel you belong at your school? But I'd like to see almost everyone feel like they belong at this school, and obviously you would too. So where did that number come from, and why do only 41% feel like they belong?
So we were just as surprised as you were to see that number, which is why it's a part of our school improvement plan. Kids come to school every day. They spend a significant portion of their time in our building. They interact with our teachers, with each other. It is a large portion of their lives. And so when we gave our students the school improvement plan, we had systems in place already. We did have team building activities. We understood that kids needed to feel like they belong. And so we have our team system at the middle school, where there's 3 teams per grade, where students work with a group of teachers on a consistent basis. So we thought all those pieces that were in place definitely, for certain, would make our kids feel like they belong and were part of our school setting. And so when we got the results of the survey, we were floored. And what it indicated to us that while we were doing many things well, there were more things that we needed to do. And so we decided that we were going to be more intentional about our practices with our students. There's always time to argue the validity of any survey, et cetera. However, our kids are speaking to us, and this is a format in one way that they are. And so because of that, we decided to be more intentional this school year, to increase time with our students, building those systems that we already had in place. So capitalize on our team system. If our kids are already together, why don't we work together, make sure that we create avenues, create environments, create opportunities for them to belong, to get that sense of community. This year, and we're still in the process of having like color wars, where our teams just selected their own colors. The goal is so that each team could have competitions against each other, again, trying to foster that level of belonging. Our teachers made commitments at the beginning of the year as far as what they were going to do to build and foster relationships with kids. Mid-year, we're going to take a look at who are our kids that we don't have a connection with. And it's an entire process that we have to go through, identifying kids, making sure that every kid in the building has someone that they can turn to in order if there's a concern. 41% is pretty low to me. It's not even half of our school population. And so we are going to continue to work on this. It is a goal of ours. Our teachers know that it's a goal. They are at their doors. Part of the directives and part of what they are open to doing and have been doing is trying to build meaningful relationships with our kids so that we can definitely work on this for our kids to feel as if they belong in our school setting. We want that. And also all of the after-school activities so that they can create different relationships with their peers. So we've been more intentional this year than we've been in the past. And then thank you to the survey for pointing that out to us.
Yeah, and then, of course, there are some students that will put no anyway, just like you ask them what they think. Like if you ask them what they think of school lunch, I'm convinced Bobby Flay could be cooking back there.
And they wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
Which is why I said, we can always argue the validity of a survey, because, we know that occurs, but we will, we'll err to the side of our students and say that it is giving us another data point that we didn't have before. And so now that we know, so you do better when you know, right? So now that we know, we'll work on it and are working on it.
Yeah, thanks. And again, it's just amazing the drive to make sure everyone's included in something. And that will probably carry over to the high school and benefit, Principal O'Sunday too, to have students already
I like
involved in
benefits.
something. So my second question is a more general question. It might be a curveball because it might not be something that was thought of for academics. I think the question could be asked for any school, but it's a little different for Sage Park and the high school, and it's about homework. Certainly, we look at what we're doing in the school, and I say it's a little different for Sage Park in the high school because one student has a variety of teachers, and their homework comes from a variety of sources. So looking at academic improvement, and I know homework's a little bit of a balance. You don't want to just give someone busy work to do busy work, but you want to give them something that can help continue what they learned in school, not be too much time that they can't do other things. But, I've heard concerns on both sides from students that are not doing enough homework to students that may have too much homework, and it's all over the place. But, in terms of meaningful homework, and I think it is important because, one indicator of future success is the work ethic a student has. And when they're coming out of high school, if they're doing meaningful homework versus blowing off all the work, it is a measure of success, and it does contribute to the classroom learning. I mean, teachers presumably are giving homework to contribute to the learning. So in terms of making sure that, the right amount of homework is there and the right, quality of homework, is there anything in that regard that we're looking at for academics? Again, I know it's a little bit of a curve. You weren't ready for that question, but.
Are you ready to try?
Yeah, I can take this. So we are having those conversations right now, and at the high school, as a matter of fact, I had a junior stop in, Morgan Finley stopped in my office a few weeks ago, and she was speaking about feeling overwhelmed, and in my conversation with her, she shared with me that there's a lot of students who are feeling overwhelmed. So from top to bottom, from students who are taking multiple AP classes to students who are taking our entry-level courses, is that point of the year, okay? Right now, with the design we have around our infrastructure for grading policies, there's different ways that go to different places. So for us, as you mentioned, homework is an extension of the learning, an opportunity to go through repetitious actions to acquire skills and competencies to bolster their opportunities to perform well. So for us, we have a committee that's assembled to look at that specific thing. It's been a conversation topic at SGC. There is no action on that yet, but the concern or the point you just made is something that we are examining. And I'm not going to commit to any change, but one of our work is always grounded on systemically reassessing whether or not the structures and processes we have in place are yielding the kind of effect and impact on learning that we want for our kids.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. curious down the road here
Yeah.
a little more. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fury?
Yeah, as to Sage Park, I know I participated with a couple of others with NEASC accreditation, so, and the folks who were interviewing us only had very positive things to say, so.
That's good.
That was great to hear, but wasn't a surprise to our group, too,
Good.
because we were singing the praises, most of us, as to what was going on in the direction of things at Sage Park. I had the opportunity to, as Ms. Jorgensen knows, attending the Geography
Geography,
B the other day, and for the sixth graders.
Sixth grade.
And, that was well done, and one of the students my wife had. So she coaxed me of going to the sixth grade, so, because obviously she couldn't be there, otherwise Mr. Gruber would have wondered where she was. But it was, the one gentleman had a hat on, and I think, what is he wearing a hat? And found out, I guess it was VIP Friday, and so
It was.
he must have deserved to be able to wear it there.
Yes.
In doing that, I also had the opportunity to go to the Technology Student Association one day.
Good.
And see both the high schoolers in one room adjacent to the middle schoolers, and they were very much engaged both in VEX robotics competition and also TSA goes beyond robotics with a lot of different opportunities where
Programming.
students get to pick the field or where they may want to be, including, public presentations on an issue that they may already have some interest in. So it was great to see that. And there are two competitions that
We're
Sage
hosting.
Park is hosting,
Yes.
February 1st and I think maybe April 4th, both Saturdays, and the public is welcome to attend those.
Very welcome.
And Ms. Hislop was doing a great job, and she was joined by Dario Soto, who's the STEM coach at JFK. So thank you for releasing him probably a little bit early so he can get over there to help out with TSA. I am interested, and since you're both here, of the connection between Sage Park and the high school. We obviously get a lot of students also coming in from out of district or coming from other schools. It could be St. Gabriel's coming, into the school system. But those transitions that we have, and we now have an extra one in the elementary level now, transitions are often very difficult. I know in talking to Mr. Osunde recently at a school governance council, we talked about that ninth grade, because in Sage Park, there's teams, and teams enable different teachers to find out, how are you getting through? I'm having trouble with this student, or getting through to something, and they have another peer teacher. At the high school, that doesn't happen. And you do a great job also of, in some ways, isolating the sixth graders who've just come there. They have, a different entrance, and I think some of the passing periods, so I think that's handled very well there. But I am interested in making sure when our kids come over from eighth grade, they're really ready as best they can for that ninth grade, and other suggestions that the two of you may have down the road of how we improve that, I'd be glad to hear. As to the high school, Ms. Taylor and I are involved with the School Governance Council, and it's one of those things that, to me, is something I look forward to every month when I can attend those. And I'm sorry that we didn't have one in December, and I think it ends early, because there's such great involvement by teachers, parents, students, and we know we have a student who is part of the group that led to some curricular adjustments or additional books in the 11th and 12th grade. And that's great to see that students feel empowered, and that also members of the School Governance Council feel that it's an advisory group. Mr. Osunde, you took the advice of that group and you ran with it. You didn't say, no, we can't do this, we can't do that, oh no, that's pie in the sky. You empowered everybody there to want to come again and to make the high school a better place. So I really have very few questions and more just the comments of where we're going. And as you know, we didn't become a lower tier school district overnight, and we're not going to get to where we want to go to, but I think the direction of both Sage and the high school is I'm very
promising.
proud to say that things are going well in both, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Panos?
Thank you. Actually, Dave just touched on one of the things I was going to talk about, which is the retention rate at the freshman level. You do an analysis. I mean, can we blame Mrs. Jorgensen for all this?
Paul Cavalieri.
Thank you, Mr. Fury.
Or do we blame some other towns around? Or what is your analysis of this? And
Student
you know,
retention?
it can happen. It's simply like transition. You talk about you go from, you know, high school is a more serious environment than I mean, it has to be.
Right. So,
but what would be? But they're supposed to be up to it, you know, and they're supposed to be able to jump to it. So,
absolutely.
what do you do? And then we can talk about.
Well, I don't think there should be a presumption that the kids are not prepared. I think at any developmental age, and you heard my colleagues speak about this, transitions are always tough, okay? It doesn't matter what age, okay? From pre-K through 2 to 3 through 5 to middle school and then obviously to high school. We have done a tremendous amount of work really zeroing in on the freshmen and their adjustment to the high school. Because there's research that says that if kids struggle their freshman year, then it's an uphill climb all the way across the board. One of the things that I do want to give commendation to our district leaders with today, and as board members, you guys spoke about this almost unanimously, is that there's themes that you're hearing from the presentations from all 6 schools that we have. And one of the biggest reasons why you're probably seeing those themes is when I first arrived, I know that the conversations I had with Dr. Cook, Dr. Oliver, and Dr. Hill, one of the things they spoke about is alignment across the entire school system. So schools are no longer functioning in isolation. One of the best benefits that we have at 50 Sage Park Road is that 25 Sage Park Road is literally 15 feet across the street, okay? With the systemic principal level meetings that we have on a monthly basis, we have conversations about all of these things and about the progress and transitions that kids make. We look at everything from data, we look at everything from data to practice to professional development. And if you look at our work over the last couple of years, you'll find that our retention rates have been going down. Even though we've zeroed in on the freshmen as a priority focus because we know what the distal implications are, we make sure we track that across the board. But in order for kids to be prepared to competently come in and embrace the rigor of new academic courses, we understand that instruction has to be the central focus of what we do. And as a district, under the leadership of Dr. Cook and Dr. Oliver, you've heard the conversations about our focus, at least in infancy stages, around Tier 1 instruction. So now our conversation is centered on Tier 2 instruction and how we group students. So I think all those strategies and all those practices and structures that we put into place are putting us in a good position to make sure that retention remains low and that all students continue to make progress towards graduation. And I think that's evidenced by our graduation rates.
Okay. Now, and because you have some retention, do you have credit recovery? Or
correct.
Edgenuity, or what's the software called?
Right. Edgenuity is the digital platform that our kids use to recover credit, correct.
And now, a question is that up to the standard of the regular teacher? You know, for example, I assume that these are mainly on basic academic courses, mostly, not obviously not vocational courses, but on math, science, English.
Yeah.
So the question is, would the students who take these, I don't know enough about how it's done. When they take it, this is obviously for a student who has failed, okay, in the second year. You don't take it, you don't go into this the first year, let's take Algebra 1 or something like this. So, now, when they take the credit recovery course, are they responsible for passing major exams that are given in regular Algebra 1 courses, or is it strictly under that software that the decision is made that they have in fact recovered credit?
Very good question. So I just want to put the disclaimer out there. There's a variety of reasons why kids may fail a course, okay? It's not always based on insufficient mastery of the content, okay?
You mean the failing?
100%. There's a variety of reasons why a child might fail a course that may not, because you have kids who can progress through a course, not do well, sit down and take a standardized test and demonstrate mastery, right? And that's just an example. But to your point, those platforms are digitally standardized courses, okay, that's aligned to state and national standards around the competencies that kids are supposed to be able to acquire. Now, my bias in individual opinion is that there is no alternative than sitting in front of a teacher and working with other peers. That's the best place for kids to learn. But we also know that doesn't always fit every individual's learning style. The benefit for us at Windsor High School is that we have certified teachers who oversee the operation of that credit recovery program. And one of the things that we've talked about with our other leaders who are here today is finding ways to make sure that more content certified teachers can find access into that space to provide support. So one of the things we did is we modified the structures around some of our duties. Okay, so rather than having somebody posted up in the hallways, because our hallways are far better than they used to be, we have teachers from social studies or English popping in and giving direct instruction with the kid that might be working on that platform. So in a way, it fills the gap and fills the need to address all the variations of needs that kids have as they seek to recover those credits.
Right. Yeah. After all, if we're going to say someone graduates, we want to make sure that they actually can do the work, the literacy, the numeracy, whatever, the math.
Correct.
Now, another question. You mentioned the AP scores. You gave the statistics on it. Now, in looking at your presentation too on that, it turns out that it's about you have several things here. Just point out that, for example, about 41% of the scores were 1 or 2. Mainly 2, not 1, but that is a high. That's a high percentage getting those kind of scores, and it doesn't look good, because after all, the record goes to the college, and so it doesn't behoove anybody to get less than a 3. In other words, it's almost a negative on you. So, you did improve a little, like about 5 percentage points on your metric there, which is the percent at 3. But, there weren't a lot at 4s and 5s. So I don't see anything here that was specific to that, or how that's going to be improved. I don't know what your view is. Maybe you can tell us what your view is. Maybe you consider this to be satisfactory, or whatever. Could you comment on that?
Sure. My view is that it's not good enough. Okay, we want all of our children who access our AP programs to achieve at a high level. Okay, but with all due respect, that 41% that you're referencing is less than it was the year before. Okay, and the reason why it's less than it was the year before is because there's been a tremendous amount of students who have made commitments to putting in the work for improvement. And there's a tremendous amount of faculty members who have made commitments to supporting kids for growth. So you're looking at that number as that 5%, 5.2% growth as not a robust number. But for us at 50 Sage Park Road, that 5.2% is representative of the faces of kids, okay? So for us, even if it's just one child who demonstrates improvement, then I would say that is aligned to the mission of the Windsor Public Schools. Obviously, we would like to see that number be in the double digits, and we're going to aspire to that. It was a commitment we made to this board a year ago when we presented the AP presentation. We were embarrassed by the output, but very similar to what Board Member Bosch mentioned about the 40 or so students who reported that they were not connected. I think one of the biggest, as leaders, we know this, one of the biggest importance about reviewing data is being honest yourself about the brutal facts of the data. As much as the data informs the work, or to the extent that the data is not as pretty as we want it to be, what's even more important is what we do with the information that we glean from that data, is the actions that we take. So I will say this, okay, we're not satisfied by that benchmark, to answer your piece about my comments on this, but I will also say that I'm not going to minimize the efforts and the work of our children or the faculty members who come in and out of that building.
Thank you. Ms. Jorgensen, what, in regard, let's say, apropos of the discussion on the retentions at the freshman level, how many retentions approximately do we do? Maybe this has popped in, I should have asked you before, this is a tough question. I mean, the freshman is about 7%. That's just what, so that's what the number is here. You don't have to answer it now if you don't, so you can get back. But I'm just curious as to what it is. You know, I'm trying to see, and obviously there are students who come in from out of town.
Correct.
Right, and so.
And we'll welcome them too.
Yeah, but do you have any feel for that?
I don't have the specific, I mean, I have numbers in my head, but I don't want to say them out loud, just in case they're wrong. But I will tell you that we take a very proactive approach to minimize the amount of our students that are retained at any grade level. So within a given school year, we have 10 interventions meetings building-wide, which means that mid-progress report, every mid-quarter, we meet with students who, at that point in the quarter, are not being successful. Our teachers, with every class that they're not doing well in, sits with a student. They create a plan as far as what they need to do in order to be more successful, what type of school resources can they take advantage of, and do they need to stay after school to receive some support. The student and the teachers create this plan together. Students sign off on it, and then we also send the plan home to parents so that they're also aware of the work that's taken place. And we reach out to the parents so that we can work together to ensure that when we get to the end of the quarter, that this child is not ending the quarter with a failing grade. And so we try to put measures in place so that we can minimize and decrease the amount of students that meet with failure. It is one of our ideals as far as, you know, the road to perfection is always under construction. So we're constantly working. At the end of the quarter, we then call a meeting again, and the kids who do fail or do not meet with mastery within those grades or the content areas, we come back to the table, we try to assess where did the student go wrong, and the student is right there with the teacher, and they also meet with me. So I meet with every single child in the building who is not being successful, and then we have a conversation. And sometimes the end of that conversation, I'll have a student sitting with me after school, because that's where they get or they need some private time to complete work. And so while I don't have the specific numbers and our retention rate is very, very low, we do take proactive measures along the way throughout the school year to ensure that we do not have kids who do not meet with mastery within the content levels in the building.
Just perhaps, you know, if there were some connection, I don't know whether you give a list of the names of those who finished Sage Park were among those freshmen who unfortunately didn't pass, or is what subject. Maybe, I don't know if there's any communication.
There is a connection.
Yeah.
We do have, we monitor this for those 10 months from starting in September or August, whenever we start school, all the way into the spring. But one of the most valuable connections that we do have is Dr. McIntyre.
Yes.
Okay, so her role by the job description and her supervision responsibilities, which is 6 through 12, she supervises the school counseling department. She works hand in hand with Principal Jorgensen as well as myself. In the spring, I know our pupil services, faculty members in our pupil services department begin to make trips to the middle school to speak about some of those kids who might need additional extra support with the transition.
Yep.
We bring the kids to the high school. I speak to the high school. I speak to the kids at the high school. Our APs connect with Ms. Bonus and Mr. Fisher to review specific kids around academics or any other additional supports they may have. And then we also have a pretty robust, well-designed summer transition program that's overseen by our school and community resource coordinator, Mr. Moore. So I'm giving you a lot of the things that we do. We have a lot of foresight in the work that we do in order to make sure our kids are adequately prepared for the transition, but it's still not a smooth process, okay? So we're open to ideas. We're open to partnering with other districts to see what they do and stealing best practices in order to make sure our kids are well ready to make that transition.
Maybe it's more of a question for the elementary. I will be asking this question is the small group instruction. You mentioned also in your write-up that you do small group instruction. Now, could you tell us, something about that? Like, how many groups do you have? Pick a, 7th grade, I don't know, 6th grade, what, in any particular class? You also do it there, so, or maybe it's the 6th grade. Where do you do the small group instruction that you mentioned throughout this?
So small group instruction occurs across the board. So if we're talking specifically about our intervention classes, I know that we have Tier 2 intervention classes. We have about 12 intervention classes that is Tier 2, which have approximately 8 students in it apiece. And so within those classes, students receive more personalized instruction. We also have Tier 3 instruction classes where you have a smaller number of students receiving more intense personalized instruction with more frequent ongoing monitoring as far as what the goals are that are laid out to be achieved. Within the Tier 1 classes, our teachers are also doing small group instruction, and it occurs on an as-needed basis and when they're delivering instruction. So in math, you have stations where teachers work with their students. They teach a particular concept through a workshop model. And then when they determine that they have students who are in need of additional support, they tend to pull small groups to provide them support within the classroom setting. This can also be seen within language arts classes as well, and just about any class throughout the building. So specific specialized small group instruction, definitely we have certain and specific classes for those, but within our contact classes as well, teachers do work in smaller group setting because it's known that within smaller group setting, kids are able to receive more personalized instruction, especially after teachers look and disaggregate the data that they're working on a particular unit or a particular goal and objective. If they've pre-assessed or they're post-assessed and they realize they have kids who need more, then small group instruction can be used, and art is used to provide those kids with additional support. So I can't give you a number because it happens so frequently throughout the building and in different classes. But as far as the intervention classes that are specifically set up for that, then those I know for certain.
Thank you. So, and they get the information you're talking about by these assessments that they make, or they standardized, not the what do we call it now? you take regular assessments, is that where the data comes from for this, for grouping them? Where do they get the data for
So-
grouping? From quizzes within the class, or is it from, not the Smarter Balance, but the STAR, or where?
So we have screeners, we have our STAR assessment, which can give us a guide. So if we're talking about the intervention classes, we are looking at students who are sometimes 3 grade levels behind in reading and or math. And so the goal of those classes is to build those deficit skills, to make sure that we can elevate those kids in those skill sets in order for them to access their grade level curriculum. And so screeners offer us the first point of data point, but it's always good to triangulate your data. So in addition to looking at the STAR assessment, based on those initial findings, teachers have pre-approved other assessments that they give to students within the classroom to make sure that they identify what are those discrete skills that our students need in order to be successful and in order to grow to access their grade level curriculum. Within the classroom setting, our teachers have curriculums. Within each curriculum, their units, their performance tasks, their unit assessments. And so those assessments provide the baseline for how to group our students based on whether or not they're able to attain the objectives for certain lessons. And so if I'm teaching a unit and I'm working a particular objective, when I post-assess my kids and I realize I have in a class of 20, I may have 3 kids or so that fall short and may not have met the objective based on an assessment, then that right there is a group of students that I can pull for a small group, quick shot, of instruction to raise them up. Now, keep in mind that teachers assess all the time. Every interaction they have with a student, every lesson that they teach, every product or work that a student produces is another data point for teachers to look at and to provide a student with additional support. And so it is an ongoing process. I want to say it's cyclical, but I wouldn't be completely honest because sometimes it's a crazy dirt road going down a path. So it's there's a lot that goes into that, but I do know that there is value in those small groups because kids, when a student is struggling, it is a difficult thing for them to experience, and to sit there with a teacher to explain, to expand on, and to provide what they need in order to be successful does help a student and makes them feel a whole lot better within the environment that they're in. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, you did. Okay. Others might have questions here.
It's just you.
Once I'm done, then we're gonna be done with Sage Park and the high school, so I wanna make sure everybody.
Yeah, just at the high school, MTSS, how does that work? I mean, I can understand it more with the elementary, Sage Park level, but I don't quite understand how MTSS works with that.
So everything Principal Jorgensen?
I mean, is it used in the honors and the high honors classes?
Yeah, it's used across the board. It's not used, it's not tiered by, if you want to call it the levels, okay? It's across the board for all children. And we look at specific indicators, and at the end of the day, what we look to do is make sure that kids are making progress towards graduation by meeting the course standards and competencies. But we also know that there's other forces and factors that impact their ability to meet those things, such as the social emotional piece, such as the school engagement piece. So we pull these different indicators, right, that will trigger whether or not we have to intervene. So a lot of the things that you were talking about conceptually, and what I would say Principal Jorgensen just masterfully articulated, was really a fundamental practice around knowledge of your students as learners and lesson planning, right? And then executing that lesson plan. So with almost 1,200 kids across our campus, we have different structures in place that will trigger our desire or our need to have to intervene if a kid is struggling. And that's the primary function of MTSS.
Okay, and so, I mean, how does this relate to what you mentioned here? We have about 20% who are on special needs or IAPs, let's say, at the high school. This is
AP students or IEP students?
No, I'm saying on IEPs, individual, education plan,
Correct.
Special needs, and a few percent, I don't know, 4 or 5% are are with 504s?
Correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, is that what you're talking about?
No.
Mainly when you're talking about with the tiers, that is going to?
No.
tier-
So MTSS is a universal function, so all kids have access to any intervention, okay? If the intervention at the Tier 3 level is not effective, then and only then is a child recommended for screening as to seek eligibility around individualized education plan, which suggests or indicates that they may have a learning exceptionality. So the end results, if Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 1 should not fail, right? Tier 2 should capture some kids for early intervention. Tier 3 is intensive, and over time with the right support, the child should hopefully return in that cyclical format to Tier 1. But if none of those approaches work, then the child is screened for a lot more intensive support, which is the IEP process.
Would you expect that to have to do that for an honors level student?
100%. Because a learning exceptionality does not mean a child is remedial. So a learning exceptionality, a kid who's classified as gifted has an exceptionality. So we shouldn't presume that if a kid is an AP student or a high honor student that they can't have an IEP. As a matter of fact, we have some kids who might be on the autism
I
spectrum.
recognize there are IEPs,
excel.
but they don't have anything to do with academics. You know, they're not, they're physical or they're some other, you know, emotional thing. In other words, there are different reasons for being special ed, other than difficulty learning or special learning disability or something like that.
I don't think a child is special ed. I think they have a learning complexity, but I don't think a child is special ed. A child doesn't walk into this world and says, I want to be special ed. They have different ways to learn or access the content, and it's our job to understand how complex it is and do all the things we need to do to make sure that they can access the content.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank both of you. I'm not going to keep you long. You will be engaging us during the budget process. So, you know, I'll be definitely I appreciate the fact you own the good, the bad, and the ugly of your buildings. You recognize it, and you're aggressively addressing it across the board. So I truly appreciate that. From a personal perspective, I've had 2 children graduate through the school system, coming in at 7th grade. The middle school and the high school has been very good to my children. I have one at the high school right now, and I got one that's in 5th grade dying to get into Sage Park Middle School. So, you know, at the end of the day, I just feel that, you know, from when I started my time on the board to now, it's 2 totally different worlds. Definitely a culture, definitely a culture shift, and a lot of aggressive effort is being placed in academics. And at the end of the day, I believe everyone on Dr. Cook's leadership is working very hard, but it's going to take a complete village. It just can't be the superintendent, it can't just be the cabinet, it can't just be the principals, it can't just be the staff, it takes everybody. The community, the parents, the guardians, we're all in this together. And no matter what we all do, if one leg of the table is not standing up, the child's not going to be able to succeed. So I appreciate the efforts that's going on within your 2 buildings. You're dealing with children that are developing. They can have mood swings at times, a lot of different things. We got this thing called social media now. We got this phenomenon where kids don't know how to go outside anymore to release some of that aggression. What in my day we call go outside and play. Everybody's stuck in front of a screen. So there's a different dynamic that you're dealing with. Quite frankly, sometimes it's confusing to me because I didn't grow up in that era. So your love must be patient and kind in order to be teachers and to educate our children. So I just humbly and simply just say thank you for all you do.
On behalf of my colleagues, children of Windsor, we'd like to say thank you for your unrelenting support for us to be able to do the work that we do for our kids. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, for the board, the next set of principals that will be coming before us will be the 4 principals of the elementary schools. And I will go in the same order that I went the last time.
Primary, intermediate.
Again, thank you for your presentations representing your respective buildings. I will start to my right with Ms. Swickerts. Any questions for the elementary principal?
Well, thank you, everyone, for presenting. I don't have too many questions, just one for Ms. Ravinola. If you don't mind, I just briefly wanted to ask, since I didn't have time to ask before, about the teacher responses. It will be in the development plan, page 7. I just wanted to see whether or not the percentage, the 34%, whether that was the percentage of the teachers responding, or how the percentage of the teachers that had a favorable response for the school.
Yes, correct. That was the favorable, so it was close to, I think we had close to 100% of teachers took it, because we tried to make sure everybody took it. And there was the 34% of the teachers who took it had favorable responses towards it.
Okay,
that make sense?
and also, did you receive any feedback from the survey as far as that they informed you if they wanted a different change or improvements or different suggestions, or why they felt the reason for their responses?
Right. Well, the survey doesn't give you that, you just get the response. There's certain questions you can kind of drill down and look at and see how teachers responded. And again, the wellness, that's why we worked with UConn, because a lot of it is now on the wellness piece of it and kind of the anxiety and stress people were feeling. So that's why we have things in place this year to help the staff. So specifically, we did reach out to the staff and we did ask some questions through some different committees. So we did get some feedback, and then we decided to put some things in place for this year.
Okay. And one other follow-up question for so when you have the teacher leadership rotation for the professional development, are they rotated on a weekly basis or a monthly basis?
So it depends on the topic. So for example, the Culturized book, the same group of people are doing every month when we have our professional development, they're doing an hour segment or half-hour segment, whatever they choose. And then other people come up if they go to some training, like we've had some of the restorative practice, so people have done some work around that as well. So it depends on what people have done in regards to the PD for themselves, professionally outside the district or in the district.
Okay. And last comment, I had the privilege to visit the school before the holiday break. It happened to be on pajama day, but I thought all the teachers did a great job in their classroom. And it was a little bit toward recess as well. So I understand, a little chaotic, but I think all of you are doing a wonderful job as well.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Khan?
Thank you. I'm going to just repeat a little bit of what I said before, because I really want to emphasize that I was happy to see the Tier 2 and Tier 3 push. I know we've seen that come up in previous budgets as well, because that's a key area. I've said this before that, I'm sure you all know the data that if a student is not reading by a certain grade, it's very hard to help them catch up. Middle and high school, not to say that they can't, they definitely can, but it becomes a lot harder. So I'm glad to see the push for improving our strategies for Tier 2 and Tier 3, and also better identification, because sometimes a lot of students aren't identified as having a difficulty until much later. I was also happy to see the focus on climate, so the restorative practices, the focus on family engagement is wonderful. And then the teacher walks. I really like seeing that some of the schools have the teacher walks, especially whether it's for new teachers. I'm sure it's for also some veteran teachers, depending on what they feel that they could learn from other people. I think somebody here even said, like, you hear from your colleagues something that you feel like you can bring back. I think teachers are always learning, and I like that we are doing that right in the building. So thank you for all your hard work, and I'm happy to see everything that's going on. So.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Elvo?
Thank you, President Lockhart. Thank you very much. And I will say one thing about this presentation over last year and others I've seen, there was a lot of consistency in how you're all progressing or utilizing the same basic parameters or structure for the students. And that's something that we had discussed a couple of years ago, having I don't want to say, use the term, I guess I will, continuum of progress along a similar path. So I think that was a solid presentation. I appreciate the fact that you guys are all working together on basically the same programs in your own ways at your own schools. Every school is different, but also every student's different. But there's that continuity of progress that I think was very positive. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Taylor?
I don't have any questions, just quickly some highlights and piggybacking on everyone else's comments. Highlights for me being a family in the district with children at the schools. You know, my son is at Oliver Ellsworth. A little shout out. The family engagement piece that I'm seeing some just really inventive things, right? You're meeting families where they're at. If we need to meet at the park, that's what we're gonna do. If you can come in, that's great. But the home visits, hands down, home visits, because I've had one, I just find them just to be super convenient as a working parent. I think other districts have seen our work with that, and I'm hearing that a lot. I'm not gonna say where, but you know, we go to conventions and people are being like, you know, we're doing that now too. Okay, great. So that's really, really huge to me, families where they're at. And then in doing that, you're really diving deeper to maybe some things that may have been going on that you didn't know about. And that's, again, social services in town and family resource center and just really getting in there to the families, because whatever's going on at home affects these kiddos. So I love the, I don't know what you call it at Oliver Ellsworth, that circle that you're doing on Fridays. Sometimes we group and we wrap on Mondays, but what about Friday? That's like the end of the week where you're going through some, you know, it may have been some heavy stuff, but it's kind of nice to debrief and kind of high five. We got through it, didn't we? So I might have to do that in my household, right? And then lastly, just really checking in with our educators, our teachers. It's a thankless job that all of you are doing, especially the classroom teachers. Ms. Peterson, you know, you said it's a lonely thing to be an elementary school teacher, and I never thought about it until you said it, because it's you and 20 maybe kids, and you don't see anybody else maybe unless it's passing time, and you don't really have to you can't even sometimes go to ladies' room, right? So it's great that there's yoga going on, and there's checking in, and there's making sure that you know, that our teachers are getting something else, you know, a hot bath, you know, and just making sure that self-care is happening so that when they do come back on Monday, they're excited to be there. So I'm really excited to hear more about that. I might have to shoot you all an email, because I think more and more what we're finding, I think the statistic is about 5 years. New teachers are lasting about 5 years, and they don't just leave the districts, they're leaving the profession. And that's a problem, especially when we're looking at diversity and inclusion. If you're looking for, you know, you're looking for a unicorn, right? And then you're throwing them all these things at them, and you want them to stick around. So I really applaud what you're doing to make sure that you're cultivating the talent that Dr. Hill has brought in for us, that they stick around, they want to be here in Windsor. It's important, not just because I have children in the buildings, but it's important because this is the economy. We're building up what Windsor's all about, and that starts in the classroom. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Bosch?
All right, thanks. And with all the programs, whatever you're doing about sleep, that's what I gotta learn about. The problem with sleep is there's just not enough hours in the day for sleep. But you know, two observations, and I might have wrote this number down wrong, but you know, one presenter mentioned that there was 22% of the staff was new this year, and another presenter mentioned a very veteran staff that's looking to, you know, expand and teach. So, the question leads into, I know as an administrative team, we're very tight. I mean, that's been the theme throughout the night, and we hear how we meet. But is there opportunities between the buildings, in particular Oliver Ellsworth and Pequannock, and then JFK and Clover Street for the staff, in terms of talent development to work together?
So, yes, we actually plan PD times together. We've had maybe one or two so far this school year, where Ms. Ravenel and I have planned to either be at JFK or at Clover Street School, doing PD just in the same building at the same time. And then they also have the opportunities as in their look-ahead sessions, the humanities teachers all meet by grade over the two schools. So all grade 3 teachers are together for a full day.
And how is that once this,
It has
semester,
happened so
once-
far
okay.
3 times.
Oh, wow.
Right. And all, so all of our grade 5 STEM teachers will meet together for a full day. So that happens, each teacher will experience that 3 to 4 times. So they have that learning opportunity. And then again, we are actually doing something coming up. What are we doing? Is it equity? No, we're not doing that.
No, we're not doing it
No,
together.
we're
We're doing it separately, because we were gonna do it together, but it's too many people, so
Ms.
yeah.
Ravenel and
We
I,
talk a lot.
we talk a lot, yeah, and try to make sure we're getting our staff together.
And it's nice because our 2 instructional coaches lead the look-ahead sessions, so it's great because, the instruction in both buildings is being aligned with each other.
It's the exact same setup.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just ditto for.
Ditto.
Yeah, and it's nice too because, you talk about the families that don't know each other, that sit, students sit next to each other, but that just extends
Right.
the families of the staff by that much. Now they have the whole additional school as part of their professional network, so that's great. Now, my other question is kind of specific, and unfortunately, for Clover, you put in a very colorful slide that the others didn't put in. This has like the pinks and the blues, so it stood out. So I do need I might need a little help in interpreting, but the number that in particular, so this is page 6 on the Clover Street School Development Plan, and I'll just, the number that stands out to me is grade 5, fall and spring. Of the 2018-2019 fall and spring reading. So you could see, obviously, there was, most times we see the improvement in the spring. Reading in the spring for that 5th grade cohort, obviously that's not where we want to be, but what makes that number even, stand out a little more is if I look the year before, because it looks like the left half of that graph is the prior year. So this is where I might need help. So that 4th grade from the prior year, from 2017 to 2018, is now the 5th grade for that year. And that 4th grade did very well in both math and reading in 2017 and 2018. But then looking, so grade 4 down to grade 5, particularly in reading, there wasn't just a fall off between fall and spring, but there was a fall off between 4th and 5th. It seems like something, it's a little unusual, the numbers I'm seeing, or I'm not understanding, so.
No, so you're seeing the numbers,
Okay.
right? So that is something that actually I have been looking at over the years. And so, but you'll see like, you're looking at the fall off. So if we just look at 2018, 2019, and you said the decline in the STAR reading, in grade 5, went down, but then you'll see the smarter balance number was higher. So honestly, I looked at that myself and said, God, what's going on here? So we've actually put some different things in place, and I actually had, and that was kind of a pattern. I actually had 2 of my 4th grade teachers from the previous school year loop to 5th grade. To see, will that make a difference in some of the scores with that personal connection with these teachers, knowing them for 2 years, right? So there is an adjustment, not just in the curriculum between 4th and 5th, but also in how our students are developing. So in 5th grade, our students at some times, and our teachers have a more difficult time building some relationships and connecting at times. So I wanted to see, will this make a difference? Because they were connected with these 4th grade teachers last year. And now that they've moved up to 5th grade, will that connection still be there enough and show that in our scores? So I'm looking at that way as well.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that you saw this and you actually took action.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks.
One other piece that explains part of those numbers, not all of that, is the percentile rank. And so you'll see that it raised it to 60% in 18-19, which means the less students are going to probably make that level. And the reason we're doing that is so it more better aligns with the Smarter Balance results, because we'd like our STAR year-end scores to be very closely with the Smarter Balance, so we can really predict where we're going to be, and 60% is going to put us closer to that level. So that's just a small piece of that.
Thank you, thanks. And I will say, one last just quick comment, no more questions, but with talent development, it starts with you guys. And, one thing from talking to each of the principals, you guys have a lot of passion. And I know you bring it to the schools, and the staff, and the teachers, and the faculty, everyone there sees that. So I think you yourself, all the 4 of you, are inspirations. And I could say that, for so many people here, but since you're right in front of me, I don't want to pass the opportunity to say, you really make a difference in people's lives, in those people's lives that you make a difference on, or the ones that are touching our students. So, we're just thankful to have you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cross. Mr. Fury? Thank you, President Lockhart. A few things. I know I had the opportunity just the other day to go to JFK and to Aletha Walker's, I think, 4th grade project Lead the Way.
Yes, 4th grade.
And I think the curriculum that's there, I know it's different at different grade levels, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but hopefully, I think Dr. Oliver may be giving a presentation later in the school year of how that is going, but students were very much engaged when I was there, and it was interesting because it was real life situations, not just a textbook learning something. There were real investigation. This was on brain development and knowledge, and they talked about concussions, and I did mention how well we've done in Return to Learn ourselves and what that's about and what that means. But I would like to Ms. Williams, I'd like to get into Liz's program at some point too, to see what's going on at Clover. I am in both schools too through the robotics program, where our high school kids are still working in both. And thank you to both Ms. Rabinola and Ms. Williams for making that possible and making sure we can fit it in with the special times on Friday that sometimes aren't every Friday of the month. You've been great working with us and our students learn a lot too about presenting to younger people about what you need to do. Again, as others have said, it's great to see what's going on with school climate, both the home visits. I know my wife has done some over at OE, and also empowering teachers, because that's your front line to all you guys. And even if something is maybe non-negotiable when we have a teacher contract, ideas that teachers have, and if they think they're heard and they're listened to, even if Mr. Gruber has to be the captain of the ship to make the final decision, at least, if you're known that you have some empowerment to that, I think it goes a long way. And teaching is a very stressful, much more so now than it was a number of years ago. And so hopefully the observations, since you have such a great staff, Tracy, I'm sure that none of your teachers have anything to worry about. I have a question about the behavior techs. I know we had them initially in the K through 2 schools, and then we added them in the 3 to 5 schools. I guess I'd like an impression about how those are going, and is there an opportunity for the 4 behavioral techs to have any time to get together about strategies that they've learned about or experienced? Here's something that's working for me. I know we have, and when we team approach at Sage Park, you have that ability of teachers saying, hey, this is how I've got through to this student or that student. Is there any of that ability as far as the behavior techs go?
So this year, actually, I sent my behavior tech to visit all of the other elementary schools. And as a result, she brought back a number of strategies that she was able to easily implement at Pequannock. Likewise, my teachers hear things that are going on in other schools, and they will go to the behavior tech and say, hey, listen, I hear they're doing X, Y, and Z at OE with kids. Can you look into that? So we try to create avenues for them to get together. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of the recommendations from one of the climate committees was to provide more opportunities for the behavior techs to have more PD and collaborative time together. So I do believe of some of that is in the works.
Great.
Can I just mention something about the value of the behavior text? So just a little anecdote, when we were doing our August professional development, there was some concern that the behavior tech, Mr. Green at Oliver Ellsworth, was gonna leave to do something else. And Mr. Higgins, I met with him a few times, kind of convinced him to stay. I think we owe him a car or something. But when we said,
There goes the budget.
but when we mentioned that he was gonna stay, there was literally a round of applause from the staff because they know what value he brings to Oliver Ellsworth. It's not just about responding to things that happen during the day, which allows Mr. Higgins and I to focus on instruction, but he also takes groups of students proactively, building self-confidence and self-advocacy, and so it's a critical position that we thank you greatly for supporting.
Yes.
Another one of my concerns is, again, families that come into the district. And is there anything you do in your schools to when you identify parents that are new, that may be new to Windsor, or, you know, in particular, new to Windsor versus new as a kindergarten student who may, or, you know, whose family's been here for a while, but in particular, people who are trying to navigate the schools as well as navigate their new potential living situation. And it's great to have the home visits, but is there anything in particular that you do with families that are new to the district?
So we actually have something called a New Kids Club. It's actually the name. And if you start in first or second grade at Pequannock, you're automatically a part of the New Kids Club. And the head teacher, the school psychologist, and school social worker meet with these students along with other students to kind of acclimate them into things that they might not have experienced because they did not come to kindergarten. It also provides them with an opportunity to meet new friends, right, in an organized way. This year, we added a parent component to it, and we had a night for new parents to come out, and also their students presented something, and they also had an opportunity to hear things that, experiences they may not have necessarily had because they are also new to either the school or the community. Sometimes it can be a bit of both. Recently, we discovered we had a need to do it again throughout the school year because we do get a significant number, I would say, of students who start after September, after the first day of school. So currently, we're starting our second round of New Kids Club for any child who did not start with us on the first day.
That's great. Maybe you could call it New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
Trademark.
I'm gonna call it the new edition.
New additions.
Yeah, I guess so.
They all start dancing together.
Don't start singing.
There was talk about the importance of empathy, and we talked about that one of the main goals has to do with academic achievement. But we want to, you know, the mission of the schools have to do with creating lifelong learners, developing the genius in every student, and just making them good citizens, being good kids who can learn, have the ability to learn. So whether or not they achieve necessarily, even though I think we all look at achievement, and it's a measure and a bar, and it's difficult. I want to know that we're having kids who come out of Windsor schools with some idea of what they want to do, their connection to their community, their connection to people. So I think the emphasis on social emotional learning that may help with the academics just goes a long way in creating the kind of students that we want to have. And it's great to hear about the work that's being done there to make those connections with students so that they can enjoy school and they want to come to school. That's something they look forward to. And I thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Mr. Panos?
Thank you. I'm just looking, probably anyone have, again, on the question I had earlier about small group instruction, for example, Ms. Williams had here, collaborative and purposeful planning for small group instruction is one of the strategies for improvement. Could you just explain how, at your levels, you do this, because that appears in most of your things. Who is it that is collaborating here? Could you give us an idea of that? How many groups are in a particular class, let's say, or group? I assume these are groups of students within a single class, I assume, but you have collaboration. Who is collaborating? Is there a second teacher in the room, or is this the PLC, or
Yes.
Everything.
Right, so I think
Right.
the spirit of
All the above.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, so the spirit of it, right, is so
Simple.
that teachers collaboratively come up with ways to better provide small group instruction to students. In this day and age, right, you can't teach at an elementary school and not do small group. So any kindergarten class that you could come into in Pequannock or Oliver Ellsworth on the first day of school, I'm gonna have everything from kiddos who start the year reading to some kiddos who know very few letters and letter sounds, right? And so if a teacher were to try to teach whole group to that class, right, you miss those high flyers, right? And you don't address the needs of the children who need more. So the small group instruction really allows you to ensure not that maybe you get what you need, but certainly you get what you need. Likewise, those groups could change daily based on the skills. So one of the things I heard Leanna talk about was a teacher is constantly checking for understanding. So at any point during the lesson, you might say, Tracy and Taryn do not have it. Come over here, sit with me, let's shore this skill up right now. Other times there are small groups that are more long-lasting, right? If they're based on STAR data or bigger benchmark assessment type data, then you might be in a small group for 4 to 6 weeks while we intervene in a particular area. And then our hope is after those 4 to 6 weeks, your progress has accelerated, you are exited from the small group, and maybe there's a need for other groups. So it is virtually impossible to provide that kind of instruction without utilizing small groups.
Ms. Peterson, I think part of the question is too, is what would be the size of that? So in a class of 18 at grade 2, what would be the size of the groups?
3 to 4. If you have more than 4 kiddos, like 5 is a stretch, but if you have more than 4 kiddos in a group, it's not a small group anymore, right? And it's
But
impossible.
how do you choose is that based on the assessments or the you put the STAR or whatever it is, or the practice?
So I'll give you a good example.
Or what,
Quantic teachers walk around with lunch lists, okay? Why do they have lunch lists all the time, right? Because it's an easy way. Today, I'm checking for how many kids can do this blend. Can they do the BL blend, right? That's a particular skill or a concept that they've been introduced to. That teacher might go around quickly, try to see, I'm going to put 3 words in front of you. Can you blend these sounds to make a word? Check you can, check you can, check you cannot, right? So the next day it might be, you 3 who could not do that blending need to meet in a small group because I need to provide you with additional instruction that says when B and L are together, they make the sound blah. Say the sound blah. See these 2 letters? Repeat those. Here are 4 blah words. Blue, blueberry, whatever it may be, right? And so they're going to do it right there on the spot, hopefully send you on your way. And then tomorrow, it might be Tracy and Taryn need a skill set shore up. So it's a fluid process for children to move in and out of that.
It could be teacher observation, it could be formative assessment. I might give an exit ticket and then look at it at night and then be like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to pull these these guys got it, these guys need more work. So it's a constant monitoring of
So
people.
the group can form for a day?
Yep.
A week?
Week,
or 4
6 weeks, 4 to
depending
6
on- and
weeks,
if
yep.
it's, but it's
Whatever the
based
need
upon
is.
Whether they have similar needs, is that the idea?
Absolutely. Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
skill,
Yep.
sometimes it's a concept, right? Sometimes, like for example, I have a group of first graders this year who just left kindergarten at an abnormally high reading level. And so sometimes they need to be in a small group to ensure that we are continuing to push them
Enrich them,
so that
yeah.
they are being enriched. A couple of years ago, we had a second grade STEM group because we had these group of students who were very interested. We had that amazing makerspace donation from Amazon, and we said, we got to find a way to kind of continue to engage these second graders because they were whipping through ST Math, they were on challenge level, and clearly they needed more. So it is fluid, changes day to day.
Yeah, Tracy's speaking to the stress that Mr. Fury mentioned, right? Because teaching is about moving every single child in your class from where they are to the next level on everything that you're teaching. So what you're teaching in math, you want to move every student in your class to the next level. Writing, reading, science, social studies. And you can't do that teaching to the whole class because they all have different needs. So it was incredibly complex. And that's why we have small group instruction.
I just draw one, I don't have it with me, but I do remember, the SBACs for grade 3. Over the last 5 years, the percent at level 1, what they call level 1, which is the remedial level, you know, SBAC, you go level 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And say level 3 is what, passing, or what is it, at the goal, and 4 is above, and the level 2 is striving, or whatever you want to call it.
Progressing, yeah.
If you look at grade 3, which is normally a benchmark that, you know, is in the industry, they say for this, the percent in Windsor of grade 3 students being at level 1, the remedial one, has gone from about 25 to 35%. So I don't know if this was noticed or tracked, but this is, you know, I was wondering now, is this, did anybody notice any kind of trend like this? I just put that out to you because I am, you know, it's just.
Yeah, and again, like Principal Jorgensen spoke about.
Have you noticed a shift up? This is just grade 3.
Right. So again, like that's one data point, right? So you like
For
to
5 years.
triangulate, you know.
It's not one data point. It's
Well,
a
I'm saying if that's,
consistent-
the SBAC score, the SBAC test assessment is one data point that we use amongst other ones to look at. I realize what you're saying, that it's over years, right? So that is an assessment that is much different and than our curriculum was aligned to, but now our curriculum is aligned to it. So now our last scores, right, we had a nice little jump going. So we are we're trying to make sure that the language that is being used in the SBAC tests are assessed, what we're teaching every day is aligned to that. Because it's a much more complex thinking that it's expected of the students. The questions that they're asked are at a very high level. They're not at a literal level, they're very inferential. So it's a heavy lift, and our curriculum now is aligned to that. So I think that was a big piece of it, is we weren't aligned to the actual test itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope I don't have the numbers wrong, but it was a five-year trend upward in that level one. I may have it wrong, you know, what the exact numbers are.
So you can't love the data more than we love it, no matter what, right? So one of the things that we always talk about at Pequannock, and I'm sure at Oliver Ellsworth as well, right? We want to set the third graders up for success. So every year, even at Pequannock, we take the third grade spreadsheet of all these student achievement, and we backwards plan those kids all the way back to kindergarten. And we say, what did it take for a student to be successful to get that proficient 3 or 4? And we literally try to figure out what is the path or profile that a student has to follow. So we're constantly engaged in looking at the data, making decisions, making changes. Is it curricular? Is it instructional? Is third grade a tricky time to transition? Like, we're constantly asking ourselves those questions. And sometimes it's try a strategy, see what impact it has, and your hope is always that it's going to have a positive impact. But sometimes it doesn't have as much of an impact as you might like, and so you're going to tweak that each piece every year. But the third grade data, we all own that data. Because there is no third grade achievement if Quantic and OE don't get the job done on our level.
On another note on the behavior issues, and I noticed there's a lot of positive thought, for example, School-Wide Monday here, when mentioned is you have, it's led by student leaders here. This is the John F. Kennedy School. It's interesting, you have the School-Wide Monday morning positive meetings. And it talks about, each school as a school community, a reminder of school focus such as kindness and to celebrate one another. Now, this theme permeates all the presentations, that there's a positive, since you're always emphasizing the positive. The question is, though, when do you tell them that negative behavior shouldn't be done?
So the positive, what we focus on, I know I can speak to JFK, so like Mr. Fury was talking about, it's about building characters, right? So our focus, when we say there's a focus about being positive, there's a focus, like right now ours is about self-control. Because we're not having, so we're telling them, the reason why we're doing self-control is because we noticed that there was a lot of referrals coming through for, putting hands in each other and not saying kind words. So I think that's part of what you are pointing out the good things that we need in the world, but what are the things that are keeping us back? And what can we do to change that? We need to make differences so that we as a community are feeling supported and cared about and safe here so that we can learn.
And I was going to say, I heard the questions is like, when do you tell them like negative or wrong behavior is wrong? Like when they do it.
When it happens, absolutely.
Right? Like if you do something, make a poor choice, that poor decision isn't glossed over with, if you don't do it again, here's why it's not a good decision. Here's what you can do. Here are replacement behaviors you could engage in. And occasionally, here's a consequence for making that poor decision when appropriate. So when children make poor choices, they are addressed immediately.
And it's also like we're pointing out how it affects you, but everyone around you. Because you're not learning, but neither are all of us right now because of your actions.
In the PD today about restorative practices, there are two types of restorative circles that we talk about with staff. One is the team building that you've heard a lot about, that's for all students. But the other part of restorative practices is restoring a relationship that was harmed. So if a student does something to harm a relationship with the whole class, with the teacher, with a peer, it's about holding that student accountable for repairing that relationship. So the student has to take ownership, admit that what he or she did was wrong, and what can that student do to make it right? That is part of restorative practices. So like Tracy said, when a student does something wrong, that's when it's brought to the attention. And it's a lot harder sometimes for a student to admit that wrong, take ownership, and say what they're gonna do to make it right, than getting sent to the office and sitting there for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
which is something that's traditional.
It's a reward.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm not gonna keep you, because I'm gonna take this, and a lot of this discussion we've had tonight is gonna be part of the budget process when you come and present before us. And I'm gonna be asking you what you need, be asking you for your BHAGs, and every support you think you need to move this presentation forth and prepare you for the next academic year. So I'm prepping you now exactly what we're gonna be asking you moving forward. But again, thank you. This is a district-wide thing. Sitting on the curriculum committee, we definitely see a lot of the work that the teachers are putting in to buy in to the curriculum, buying into the level setting across the district. It's a lot of work. Mr. Panos, I look forward to you on the curriculum committee and engage you on a lot of the stuff that they've done on the curriculum side over the past 3 years. And you'll definitely get to see a lot of that stuff as well. So I think you'll be pretty impressed with what's going on in these particular areas, especially in the elementary side. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Announcements. Dr. Cook, before we close, anything you would like to say?
Just want to thank the principals and the board for engaging in really good conversation. You know, I think you've seen a lot of the work that we're trying to do of pull things together, consistency. Want to thank Dr. Oliver, who, you know, through some of your comments and compliments, you really did compliment in terms of the structure that you saw in terms of our work and our school development plans, the fact that we've kept them very similar for year after year, and they fit in very nicely, I think, with our you know, district improvement plan and district-wide work in terms of academics, positive school climate, talent development, and systems. So that's been a big piece of Dr. Oliver's work throughout the district, and you know, it works very closely with the principals on that. So I didn't want to miss her tonight in that work. You know. And just, you know, thank you.
All right, two more agenda items, announcements. Ms. Ricketts, anything?
No announcements. Again, thank you for all of your hard work and your input, and I can see that all of you are striving and making additional steps and recommendations to promote the school morale and to increase the achievement for the students, and you're also trying to engage the community and the parents as well, and to see what works best for the students. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Khan?
Nothing, I just want to say thank you for coming out, staying this late, and for all that you're doing in your building. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ellavelle?
Nothing, just a thank you to the administrative staff and those who were present. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor?
Thank you all again, 3-hour meeting. Yeah, so I just want to wish everyone, because we won't meet again until after Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, I always say make it a day on instead of a day off, and keeping all the empathy and all the things that we talked about today and mindfulness at the forefront on Dr. King's birthday acknowledgement. And also, I don't know if anybody knew this, but Dr. Cook will be recognized as a bridge builder next Thursday for the Human Relations Commission. We need to clap that up. Congratulations. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bosch?
Nothing to say, just thanks, and may there be no more snow days this year.
What?
You don't want that.
I don't know about that.
We don't say that.
Mr. Fury?
Yeah, I want to echo what board members have said, thanking the folks to come out here and present to us and answer our questions that we had and being this late. Also, congratulations to Dr. Cook. I was going to mention that about bridge builders, and we have a number of people here who are former bridge builder recipients. So that's done by the Human Relations Commission, and it's always a fun evening honoring those who do such great work in our community. Martin Luther King Day celebration will also be led in town by Miss Jorgensen. So thank you for that. And that's all I have.
All right. Mr. Panos?
I also would like to thank you all for the presentation. This was quite thorough, Ms. Oliver, and and I'm just sorry that I couldn't carry on for another 2 or 3 hours. I know you couldn't stand it.
Welcome back, Paul. All set, sir? All right. I was going to mention about the bridge builders. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. I was going to mention about Ms. Jurgensen. Thank you, Mr. Fury. With that being said, to the teachers and staff and everybody that participated today, thank you very much and keep up the good work. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Such a motion?
So moved.
I heard Mr. Ellavelle. Is there a second? Second. Motion made by Mr. Ellavelle, second by Mr. Fury to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Abstention. Motion carries 8-0-0. We adjourn at 9:37. Have a good evening.